For this week. Glad to see everybody. We're going to start on time and try to hold it. We got a long session. We're hearing from more agencies this year than we have in the past. I feel like it's a very timely set of meetings. We appreciate your attendance today. That's about all I've got to say. Mr. Chairman, you want to put it in context for us?
Well, welcome from us on the House side as well, ladies and gentlemen. We appreciate everyone being here. Appreciate those folks that are watching online as well. Just a housekeeping measure. If you're sitting in one of the desk seats and you're not a member of the committee, please give preference to those that are on the committee. So if you see a member of either approach House or Senate come in the door, and you're sitting up there, if you would give them your seat so they can spread their books out and be able to make notes. We have 82 seats on the floor, and I think we've got 83 or 84 members of the House Appropriations Committee, plus the Senate's 20 some odd. So it makes it for a little bit tight quarters, but I know a lot of folks will be coming and going. But again, if you're not on the committee and you're sitting up there and you see someone come in on the committee, if you would please allow them to take your seat. Also, as to try to keep a little bit of control of our time and be mindful of our time, we do restrict questions to members of the Appropriations Committee. If you're a member of the House or Senate that's not on either one of the committees and you have a question, just get with a member from your respective body and ask them to ask the question for you. We'd appreciate that as well. We do that just to help us manage some time. So all that said, again, welcome. We have 2.5 very busy days in front of us. Actually a little better than 2.5 with the block grant hearings on Thursday afternoon. Appreciate everybody making time to be here for those. And we're going to try to keep ourselves on schedule, but we will also try to make sure that we've got time for the presenters to answer any questions you may have. And I would just ask that you do put those in the form of a question, not necessarily a statement as you make them to the presenters. At this point, we are waiting for the governor to arrive. He is scheduled to be here at 9:15. We're a little bit ahead of schedule. It's 9:03 right now, so I would just ask if it's okay with my chairman that we just remain at ease right now until the governor arrives. And if you do get up and start milling about, please listen that when we call you back to order, we're ready to go and welcome the governor to the chamber. So we'll be at ease for just a few minutes. something that I think is very important for us, and that is to open us with a word of prayer. So I'm going to ask Chairman Nix, if he will, to do our invocation this morning as we get ready to start.
Let's pray. Father, we thank you for the blessings you give to us. Father, we thank you for the opportunity to serve the people of Georgia. We pray now that you would be with us as we go through these deliberations. Lord, give us a clarity of mind, of purpose, that we might find the opportunities to do the best that we can to serve those who are in need. Lord, we thank you for the day. Just bless us as we seek to do your will. In Christ's name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Randy. We'll go back at ease for just another minute. Thank you. If you would, please take your seats. Ladies and gentlemen, please make welcome to the chamber the Governor of the great state of Georgia, the Honorable Brian P. Kemp. Good morning, Governor.
Morning.
Hope you're doing well. Thank you for being with us. And know your time is valuable and everything, so the podium is yours.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank both the chairman and the members for having me this morning. You'll be glad to know this isn't my PowerPoint up here. I'm sure it would not work if it was. So appreciate the opportunity to be here for you today this morning. And as I said to you last week, I want to thank the hard work of both the chambers and certainly Governor Deal before me. Because of that, Georgia's economy rests on a rock-solid foundation, as I've said many times. We've been recognized now, as you know, 7 years in a row as the #1 state in the country for business. We've reduced burdensome regulations, created a business-friendly tax environment, invested in a world-class workforce, and led the nation in investing in our transportation infrastructure. In the last 12 months alone, 250,000 more Georgians now have jobs, and our unemployment rate, as I said the other day, is at an unprecedented 3.3%. Today, I'm pleased to present to you the blueprints to build a stronger, better Georgia on that rock-solid foundation that is laid before us. Now, I don't know about you all, but I know that I've never had a construction project where I had an unlimited budget. Being a good builder means recognizing the resources you have and using them efficiently as possible to build the best product. Georgia taxpayers are the investors, as you know, on this project, and it's our job to use their dollars wisely. Even in this positive economic climate, to fully support our students and teachers, care for our most vulnerable Georgians, and strengthen our economic development efforts, we must prioritize our existing financial resources. It means reducing unnecessary costs of government while continuing to deliver excellent service for our citizens. Last summer, I met with the leaders of our state agencies, and I challenged them to identify opportunities to streamline operations, eliminate duplicative programs, and leverage technology to serve our state citizens better. The budget before you shows that reducing costs doesn't require drastic cuts to other agency activities. I want to sincerely thank our agencies who have thoughtfully identified opportunities for better efficiency. And I want to highlight a few of those for you this morning. First, the Department of Community Supervision was able to find almost $1.3 million in savings by increasing its use of mobile technology and shifting to a virtual office model. This change will not only save the state money spent on real estate, but it will also greatly enhance the work of our officers. By using the virtual offices model, parole and probation officers will be able to spend more time with each individual they're monitoring, improving opportunities for success for those individual offenders, while also allowing officers to monitor a larger number of those offenders. Virtual offices will provide a safer work environment to our officers, and by allowing greater oversight of offenders, we will enhance safety of the community at large. The Department of Corrections is also deploying a more accurate, real-time keeping system for its correctional officers. This updated system will enable the agency to save a whopping $16 million next year in overtime costs, simply through more efficient scheduling of their officers. Several agencies evaluated their current space usage and found ways to reduce their real estate footprint to save funds on rental costs. Others consolidated administrative functions or reorganized back-of-the-house operations to streamline administration and reduce duplication of efforts, all with no impact on service delivery to our citizens. Our agencies have also been working together to eliminate duplication, to improve interagency coordination, and to reduce cost of the administration while maintaining or improving access for citizens. The Department of Community Health will transfer right from the START Medical Assistance Group to the Department of Human Services, saving more than $3.7 million a year in administrative cost without compromising good customer service and access to patients, especially for new mothers and infants. The Department of Natural Resources and Community Affairs will consolidate their separate historic preservation activities into one unit within the Department of Community Affairs. This will result in a net 25% reduction in administrative cost while providing a centralized source of assistance for local communities. The Commissioner of Insurance will transfer regulation of the industrial loans to the Department of Banking and Finance, which already regulates our non-depository financial institutions, which often provide similar service. These changes will benefit money service businesses by eliminating the need to send state regulators from two different agencies to oversee the same company. It'll save the state millions of dollars every single year with no reduction in the quality of service that we're providing to our citizens. Our workforce is one of the strongest assets in attracting business to our state. We must continue to invest in our citizens to give them the skills that they need to fill the jobs of the future. Our teachers work tirelessly to shape the lives of countless young Georgians by equipping them with the right tools for personal and professional growth to prepare them for life as well as the workforce. We must continue to invest in our teachers, attract the best and brightest to the profession, and reward hard work through their careers. Last year, we gave a base pay raise for certified Georgia pre-K and K-12 teachers by $3,000. This budget proposal includes an additional $2,000 pay increase to fulfill my promise of a combined $5,000 for our educators. They are highly deserving, and I'm proud to include this pay raise for your consideration. We also know that an increasing number of jobs require some form of post-secondary education. Therefore, we must continue to provide the future workforce with access to affordable higher education opportunities. This budget provides more than $81 million to the university and technical college systems to fully fund enrollment growth and mitigate the need for a student tuition increase. It also designates nearly $56 million in additional lottery funds for the Hope Scholarship and grant programs to assist high-achieving students with college affordability and those that need to learn a skill to get a great job. Our robust infrastructure across air, land, and water spurs our economic growth. This transportation network drives business to the Peach State because companies can quickly and reliably move goods throughout Georgia to a national or international marketplace. To maintain and expand our network, this budget proposal adds $51 million to the Department of Transportation for roadways, $50 million in general obligation bonds to repair and replace bridges, and $1.8 million for motor carrier officers to maintain safety on our highways and maintain the integrity of our ports corridor. As you know, public safety is the most fundamental purpose of government. I remain committed to the safety of Georgia communities and families who are increasingly threatened by the rise in the criminal street gangs. To combat this crisis head-on, this year we launched the Anti-Gang Task Force at the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. I certainly appreciate you all's support in us being able to do that. But to support and expand their important work, I've included nearly $2 million between the amended and fiscal year budget for 7 new positions to the task force. This funding will also operationalize the statewide gang database, which will help state and local law enforcement track gang activity and use valuable data to stop and dismantle criminal enterprise. This was a priority of the legislature many years ago. It is now being funded and becoming a reality. The rising cost of health care continues to be a threat to the financial well-being of too many hardworking Georgians. My administration is working daily with our state and federal partners to lower costs for Georgia families and better support rural health networks. The amended fiscal year 2020 and 21 budget will continue to prioritize quality, affordable health care for vulnerable citizens with almost $90 million in the 2021 budget for enrollment and expense growth in Medicaid, especially for the projected needs of the aged, blind, and disabled population. The amended budget also includes $23 million to provide the state match for the disproportionate share hospital payments for private deemed and non-deemed hospitals serving low-income patients, leveraging an additional $47 million in federal assistance for these hospital systems. Finally, I'd like to take a moment to recognize the hard work of our state employees. Their commitment to public service improves the lives of our fellow Georgians each and every day, and we must take care of those who take care of us. Agency leaders regularly cite employee recruitment and retention as one of their biggest challenges. High staff turnover wastes taxpayer resources and causes disruption in service. That's why this budget includes more than $45 million to fund a $1,000 pay raise to full-time state employees currently earning less than $40,000 a year. I'm proud of the common sense savings included in this budget. I believe that we've shown taxpayers that we're good stewards of their hard-earned money, and with this blueprint, we will continue to build a state that Georgia will be proud to call home. I also fully understand that the legislature has the opportunity now to put your blueprint on the budget, and we sincerely look forward to working with you as we did last year to come up with a budget that will make our citizens proud, continue to move our state in the right direction, and continue to make Georgia, as it is now, in my humble opinion, the best state in the country to live, work, and raise our families. I know that you're going to hear from our state economist, Dr. Jeffrey Dorfman this morning, the OPB director later in the week, and the agencies. I know that you will get a lot of information out of that. You'll probably also have a lot of questions that you may not get answered today, but we're looking forward to working with you to get you those answers and to continue to work on the priorities of all that are in this building to keep our state great. So thank you, Chairman Hill and England and the rest of the committee and the members that are here today for having me. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you, Governor. Mr. Dorfman, you come on up.
Here's the clicker. It's got like presentation functions on it.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Dr. Jeffrey Dorman from the University of Georgia. He's the state economist. He's here to talk about our situation. Glad to have you, Mr. Dr. Dorfman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Chairman. Members of the Joint Committee, I'm happy to be here with you this morning to give you a little bit of an updated economic and budgetary outlook since the last time I was with you in October, I believe. While I'm here today to talk to you about the Georgia economic outlook, I want to start with a little national and international picture because Georgia's economy is linked both to the country as a whole and to the world economy. And it's important for us to look at those. A lot of people don't realize that if you just pay attention to the news and what's going to happen to the U.S. economy, it doesn't necessarily give you a very accurate view of what's happening to any particular state economy. For example, since the end of the last national recession in 2009, 38 of the 50 states have had at least one recession, and Alaska has had 6. Georgia's only had one recession since the last national recession for a brief 6 months in 2011, but still, we need to look at the big picture, and then we need to see how Georgia is different, sometimes doing better, sometimes not doing as well. This chart shows you the international picture in a very nice way, I think. In the left column, you have the 6 biggest economies in the world. In the middle column, you have the 6 largest trading partners of the U.S. And on the right-hand column, you have the 6 largest buyers of U.S. exports. If the name of the country is in red, they're currently in a recession or almost in a recession. So as you can see, a lot of the people we do business with are struggling. And if you notice that little note at the bottom of the slide, Georgia is the 12th most trade-dependent state in the United States. So when the rest of the world isn't doing very well, those are our customers, right? When your customers don't have money to spend, they can't buy as much from you. Here's sort of the national picture. At the top left, you have an index of manufacturing activity in the U.S. As you can see, it sort of has been going downward on the right-hand side. The manufacturing sector in the U.S. has been in a recession for over 6 months and appears to be continuing to shrink. On the top right, you have the service sector, all the stuff that is not manufacturing. It is still expanding, but you see it also has been trending downward. It has been growing, but growing more slowly. Okay, so we have manufacturing sector is about 12% of the U.S. economy, and that 12% is shrinking. Services are over 70% of the economy. They're growing, but only at about 1 or 2% a year. Okay? The bottom green graph shows you retail sales. And that's only there for you to see that we really can't tell anything from retail sales about what's going on. I mean, I can't look at that line and say, oh, I see how much money we can spend. It just bounces around like crazy. And it takes us years to figure out whether something has really changed there. This chart is a rare chart in that the line is going down, but that's a good thing, right? Usually we like to see lines sloping up. In this case, sloping down is good. What this chart shows you is the percentage of disposable income Americans are spending on debt payments. This is revolving debt, so it doesn't count your mortgage. So this is auto loans and credit cards, basically. Student loans would be in here, too. When the recession hit, Americans were spending 13% of their disposable income on debt payments. Today, we are only spending 10%. That's important because one of the reasons the last recession was so painful was when it began, people had already maxed out their available credit, and so when their incomes fell, they had to cut their spending. So retail spending dropped a lot. We had stores closing all over the place. People were losing their jobs. Now, with households only spending 10% of their income on debt payments, if we do have a slowdown, American consumers have more room to take on a little more debt and try and keep their spending more constant. So any economic slowdown we do have will likely be more mild. Okay, so that's some good news. Here are the things that essentially we have to worry about. Okay, the U.S. economy and the Georgia economy are strong enough that we should not have a recession and we should continue positive growth unless a shock to the system causes everybody to change their behavior. So these are the shocks that we worry about. Right now, the trade war with China is in a lull, but China's economy is probably in a recession. We hope that doesn't get worse. Right now, they have a public health crisis potentially beginning in China. Again, that can cause problems for their economy if everybody kind of hides at home to avoid getting sick. Germany and Europe The entire European Union grew by 0.1% in the last quarter. So they are barely managing to grow. And as you remember from the earlier chart, they are very big customers for our businesses. Right now, it looks like Brexit is going well. Hopefully that won't take a turn for the worse. 2020 election, just if something or things happen that create more uncertainty there. And as we saw just a couple weeks ago, the Middle East and oil prices can get us at any time. Now, as we continue to move to more Georgia and Georgia Pacific, wage growth in Georgia has been quite solid, but job growth has been rather slow. When we look from August of 2018 to August of 2019, we actually only added 0.3 to employment in Georgia. That has picked back up from November 18 to November 2019. Job growth is back up to 1.4%. So there's a chance that we hit a slow patch, we're past it, and things are getting better. That's what we're hoping. Consumer sentiment has dropped. Sales tax collections so far this year are up 2%. Okay, so that is certainly not a recession. That is still growing, but it is growing more slowly than that has in the past. So I believe Georgia's economy is likely to continue to grow slowly over the next 9 to 12 months, which means we will have some additional revenue, but not as much additional revenue as we are used to having. Here's a picture of what happened with employment, and you can see it was growing. We had a little tiny dip. Tax collections sort of tend to lag the economy a little bit, so you can see it's going up now. And I think that means we'll see collections start to go up again as well. I mean, really the lesson here is the Georgia economy is so good, we have essentially run out of workers, and it is very hard to grow employment when your state unemployment rate is 3.3%. If you read any economic textbook, we're already slightly below the level they claim is the lowest you can get to. Okay, so it's just not to criticize economic textbooks, you understand, but it's hard. This chart is consumer sentiment. This is how are American consumers feeling. If you want to know how the budget's going to be in the future, this is the best chart to keep your eye on. You can look this up online very easily. University of Michigan does a monthly survey, and you can see that it's bouncing around a little bit, but it has not gone down sharply. We would expect it to drop about 10% from where it is now before we would have a recession. So far the consumers still feel pretty confident that things are going to be okay. Highlights of our economy in Georgia are we have record employment. There are more people working in the state of Georgia today than has ever been the case in the past. We also have the lowest recorded unemployment rate we have ever had in the past. I believe the latest number I got from the governor was 79% of plant openings that involved project works by the Georgia Department of Economic Development were outside the metro Atlanta region. That means we are growing the Georgia economy everywhere. It's growing in Atlanta and it is growing in the rest of the state. And as he often says, we are the #1 state to do business in for the 7th year in a row. These are all good things that tell us the state of our economy is quite good. So, after I told you how wonderful everything is, why is the budget so tight? Budget is tight because revenue growth is slow. So why is revenue growth slow? Revenue growth is slow because while employment is growing, and employment is an all-time high, it is growing slowly. Retail sales, all-time high, but again, growing slowly. Corporate taxes, also an all-time high, actually growing decently. That's our one bright spot, really. The chart you see here, and I'll show it to you again in a minute in a slightly bigger form, shows you sales tax collections for the state, drawn in to show you how that has slowed down. But you'll get a better look at that in a minute. Also important to remember, one of the reasons that the budget is tight is because state government has returned both to taxpayers and to local government a significant amount of potential state revenue. Lowering the income tax rate lowers state revenue collections by $500 million. Okay? Now, that does not say it is a bad thing. I think many of us in this room are quite happy to have citizens have their money rather than us have the money for them. But it does mean there's less in state coffers for us to put in the budget. The change in the title tax sent $170 million to county governments instead of to state government. So when you look at those two changes, there goes a lot of the revenue growth that we normally have. Okay. Finally, as Governor Kemp talked about, he has priorities. The legislature has priorities. You will now spend several months discussing and finding compromises on your priorities, but it is important to understand the math here. There are parts of our budget that either everybody agrees are priorities and need to grow faster than revenue, or that are essentially on autopilot like Medicaid and are growing faster than revenue, and there's not much we can do about it. So in order to have the budget match revenue growth, if some things grow faster than the average, other things need to grow slower or be cut. That's just how math works. And so given the additional funding the legislature is providing for education and for public health, there simply is not enough money left for things that we have not made as much of a priority. This is just a picture to show you where all your money comes from. The right-hand side, slightly over half of the pie, is income taxes. And the big green slice on the left is sales taxes. Those two things are pretty much the only two things that matter. The other stuff adds up to less than 1/4, and a lot of that other stuff is also designated. For example, motor vehicle-related taxes that automatically go to GDOT. Okay? We're having right now, so far, first 6 months of the year, income tax collections only grew by 0.3%. So half your pie only grew by 0.3%. Sales tax, that other quarter, is only growing at 2% so far. So that's 3/4 of the budget that so far have added only about 2/3 of 1% additional revenue. Here's this sales tax picture again. You can see how we were growing more rapidly, and then it's been much slower recently. Finally, I think we should consider these good news sides. This is the rainy day fund. Revenue shortfall reserve. You can see that we are an all-time high of about $2.8 billion right now, and approaching 11% of the size of the budget. I think that's very important and prudent, because if you look back to 2007, you will see that we were at $2 billion and about 8% of the budget, and that wasn't enough. We went through all of it, and if we'd had more, we could have used more, and you would have had to cut the budget less. So I think it is important that we continue to be prudent managers of the state's resources and make sure our rainy day fund stays healthy. This, of course, is the number one thing that bond rating agencies look at when they decide whether Georgia gets to keep its AAA bond rating. And so this is vital for that purposes, and keeping that AAA bond rating saves the state of Georgia millions and millions of dollars every year, because the interest rates on our bonds are therefore lower. This is state funds per capita. So we're adjusting for inflation and for population. What you can see here is that Georgia has reached once again sort of its all-time high. We peaked once before the 2001 recession, dropped down a little bit then, had mostly come back before the 2007 recession. We dropped a lot. We have now regained that point. I think one thing to think about, and I think this is one of the things that the governor thinks about, is there a reason this now needs to continue to grow, or are we back to what we think is a suitable level? And at this point, it is better to return money to taxpayers than to continue to have state revenue grow. But this gives you a good look of putting in perspective what the size of state government is right now. With that, I am done, and Thank you very much for listening.
Questions? Representative Smyrie.
Over here, Mr. Dorfman.
I see, sorry.
On the non-discretionary budget items, I think you say that from FY20 amended to FY21, it goes from, did you say 200 to 500 million? The non-discretionary?
I think that sounds correct, yes.
What, can you give us a little idea of why that is?
Oh, what's in that?
Yes, what's in that? Yes, sir.
The largest element of that is fully funding QBE. So then most of the rest is anticipated increases in Medicaid spending. Then there's a few things like the land conservation program, the forestry thing that we have to fund from somewhere. But far and away, it's pretty much fully funding QBE, enrollment growth for education, and Medicaid.
Chairman Smith, Lynn Smith.
Thank you. Over here directly in front of you. So my question kind of piggybacks on Calvin Smyrie's question. Through the years I've been up here, I've noticed that the state of Georgia, through legislation, is putting more and more restraints on discretionary spending. We have more formulas to allocate X number of dollars. Are we reaching that tipping point of where we have fewer discretionary funds to use to solve our problems?
That is a great question. One of the best ways I think to answer that is the state budget is $27 billion. The governor's 4% budget cut to this fiscal year saved $200 million. So 4% of $27 billion would be over $1 billion. That only saved us $200 million because of how many things are exempt from the cut. Those are the things I think you're talking about that are essentially formula-driven or on autopilot. So when you hear a lot that the federal budget, 3/4 of it is non-discretionary. Congress only deals with 1/4 of it every year. Georgia actually has a larger percentage of our budget right now on sort of autopilot than the federal government does. We're about 80% on autopilot, and you all are talking about the other 20%. Now, admittedly, that's putting in the 80% on autopilot K through 12 education. It's not really on autopilot, right? But if you assume that the legislature wants to continue to fully fund QBE, then 80% of the budget is essentially already determined.
Thank you.
Representative Petrie.
Thank you so much for your very good presentation, sir. You mentioned our rainy day fund, our revenue shortfall reserve, $2.8 billion. Can you tell us how that compares? Obviously, I know we're right at the top of our AAA bond rating nationally, but can you tell us how we compare nationally at where we are today at $2.8 billion in reserves?
How it compares to other states?
Yes, nationally. Where would we rank?
I actually couldn't tell you where we rank, I'm sorry. Okay. I believe there are other states that are higher, but I would guess we are fairly close to the top.
Representative Stovall.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I read an article recently in the James magazine, and it stated that due to the automation and the changing of the economy, that Georgia is in danger of seeing 1.5 million of its workers and their children be unemployed or underemployed in low-wage jobs. And I know earlier you had talked about the growth in employment, and so I want to know kind of what are some of the things that we need to be focusing on now, being that it's showing that we have increase in employment, but looking at what automation is going to do to a certain group of individuals in our state, that we need to be more proactive.
Sure. Thank you for the question. I will admit I am not a person who worries about robots stealing all our jobs. My background is in agricultural economics originally, and agriculture used to employ 90% of the population in this country. Thanks to automation, right, big tractors, agriculture now employs 1 to 2% of the population. But the 88% of the population that lost their jobs in agriculture because of automation all got other jobs. Will manufacturing workers lose their jobs due to automation? I mean, that's been happening for 50 years. Will new jobs be created just as fast? Yes, I'm confident they will be. Before the robots started getting put in the factories, we didn't have a job classification known as software engineer, web page designer, or anything like that. So I don't think I know what the new jobs will be, but I think we don't really need to worry that we're going to lose all these jobs to automation. They won't be replaced by something. I think it is important that the people at the Board of Regents, at our high schools and the State Department of Education and our technical college system of Georgia figure out what those jobs are going to be and make sure they have training programs ready for those new jobs. But unfortunately, we kind of figure that stuff out, if we're lucky, a few months or years in advance. For the most part, we actually figured out a little after we should have figured it out, and we're just always trying to play catch up. So I think I would agree with you, it is important that our training programs are nimble and continue to respond to changes in our labor market. But I think we can do that. We've done it so far, and I think we can keep doing it.
Thank you.
Representative Watson.
Right here, Dr. Dorfman, in the middle. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you being here. Question is, with agriculture being our state's #1 industry and our state very dependent on trade, how or will the Chinese trade agreement impact our economy as far as agriculture goes, and how will the USMCA agreement impact our agriculture and our economy in the state going forward?
Sure. The China trade agreement does a little bit for the Georgia economy, not a whole lot, because mostly it's going to help soybean farmers. We don't grow a lot of soybeans. But the decreasing tensions with China will help us in two ways. One, they buy a lot of our pecans, and they had put a tariff on that, which they've now taken back off. That's worth quite a bit of money to us. And they recently, I think a few weeks before the signing of the Phase 1 trade agreement, opened their markets to Georgia poultry products. They had banned us for a number of years over some, what I would say, questionable concerns about the health of our chicken products. But because of the problems they're having with their pork sector, they need more protein. So them taking shipments of our chicken is huge. And I was talking to the head of the Georgia Poultry Federation on Friday, and he says the first shipments are ready to start heading to China already. So that's going to be a big boost to our poultry sector, which is the biggest part of our agricultural sector. USMCA will be good for quite a number of farmers and agribusinesses in Georgia, again, including the poultry sector. It will also be bad for a few sectors of Georgia agriculture, particularly fruit and vegetable growers. So net, we will win, but some people in Georgia will be hurt.
Senator Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Over here. On the retail scale you showed earlier, you mentioned that you couldn't tell much by it, but I'm always concerned about consumer confidence and consumer spending. There were two blips on that screen. Do you recall what those were? They were really dramatic, and everything else was in line.
Consumer spending or consumer sentiment?
One of the very first slides in green on the bottom. Whoop,
this
there
one.
we go, right there. Retail sales. What are those two real positive blip there? And then
Okay, so the really big one in 2008.
Was that cash for clunkers? No. Kidding.
No, that's almost, so that is almost surely a data artifact.
Okay.
That's where something got revised or moved from month to month, so that you want to ignore. And then the one, actually, I'm sorry, that's back in 2001. The big drop you see, that's actually the start of the recession.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Sure.
You're so funny.
Representative Beverly.
Thank you, over here. Based on the budget, there's two questions I have around the income tax. Does the budget assume that we're going to have a 0.25% decrease in income tax currently? And if so, then where do we make up that revenue difference? Admittedly, you said that the last time we did just recently we did the 0.25% cut, which basically reduced the budget by $500 million. So if we do it again, then that assumes we'll, get another $500 million in reduction. Where do we make up the money? And that question is because do we go to rainy day fund and then we start to erode that? I mean, where do you make up the difference, given the fact that corporate income tax is 5%, sales is 26-27%? I'm just trying to figure out where that difference is made up if we reduce the income tax again by 0.25%.
Okay, so if the income tax was reduced by another 25%, it would cost another $500 million. And where that money gets made up is between you all and the governor. That's not, I couldn't begin to answer that because nobody asks me. Okay.
Senator Gooch.
Just a quick follow-up. Just the first part of the question I don't think you answered as well is, does the budget currently assume that 0.25% is in there?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I missed that one. I heard it and then forgot to answer it. So no, the governor's submitted budget does not include for now, not saying it will never happen, but it is not in the FY21 budget.
Thank you.
Senator Gooch.
Sir, up here up front, to your right here. We've heard numbers in excess of $2.5 billion for damages from the hurricane in Southwest Georgia. What impact do you think we see in today's economy as a result of that storm, and when do you see that recovering in the numbers that we're looking at going forward?
Sure. First of all, as the person who came up with the $2.5 billion number, I can tell you that's a very accurate number.
Thank you.
Second, so what did that do to the economy? That took probably about 0.5% off of economic growth in the state of Georgia. It's a little hard to tell. We actually still don't have exact numbers on how much we got back in insurance. We are getting close to getting another round of federal disaster relief aid. I was at a meeting with the Commissioner of Agriculture in Macon on Friday talking about exactly that and how he and his staff have been working very hard to build an infrastructure and a procedure to get that money to Georgia farmers as quickly as possible when we finally pry it out of Washington, D.C.'s hands. So getting that money will be a nice boost to the recovery. Maybe add 1/10 or 0.2% to Georgia economic growth. Other than that, we are slowly but surely recovering from it. It's very hard when you get a hit like that and you don't get the relief money you were promised.
Thank you. Can I ask a second question?
Sure, go ahead.
Based on what I'm hearing you say, I'm trying to sort of read between the lines. With the unemployment numbers at historic lows and the economy hitting as strong as it has for so long, it sounds like you're saying we've reached our capacity. Is that a fair word? And if so, what do we do with policy to increase our capacity with, and I'm not talking about government spending, I'm talking about consumer spending.
No.
Do we lower the income tax rate to increase that capacity? Do we leave it where it is? What can we do policy-wise to increase our capacity throughout the state?
Sure, it's a great question. So there are a few things you can do, some of which you're already doing. Funding education is the smartest thing you can do to try and grow the capacity of a state by investing in our human capital. And research shows it typically roughly pays for itself. That increased human capital means higher earnings, which means they pay higher taxes, so you get that education money back. Infrastructure, which is also a priority for the governor and for this legislature, is the second smart thing you can do. So improvements in Hartsfield and Savannah and Albany's airports and the ports, all the interstates, fixing those roads and bridges, those are things that all help us grow. After that, you're right, because we're at capacity, you kind of have to steal your growth from somebody else. And so that means either growing population, getting people to move to Georgia, or getting companies to move to Georgia. I don't believe the way you get companies to move to Georgia is by lowering the income tax rate. The reality is that once we add our federal and state income tax rates together, 0.25% one way or the other on the state income tax rate just doesn't move the bar. I think thinking about smart ways to attract businesses, like keeping our rating as the #1 state to do business, removing needless regulations, speeding up the permitting process, these are the things that we need to do.
Thank you.
Sure.
Representative Chugus.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Dorfman, recently we passed in the House legislation to create a marketplace facilitator to get the taxes that should have been paid on the internet.
Yes.
And from the things that I've read, the internet sales over the brick and mortar sales still keeps climbing more and more. How do you see that affecting revenue in the next year or two, and in reference to our sales tax?
So I would encourage the legislature to pass the market facilitator bill this week with an effective date of next week, and we'll then ask the governor to sign it immediately. It is essentially free money, right? It is already owed to Georgia, but not having that law in place is allowing a huge number of small businesses spread around the country to avoid paying those taxes. We're already collecting from large internet sellers. I believe the market facilitator bill will add about $120 million a year to state tax collections. So in other words, we're losing $10 million a month. So every week that bill's not passed, there's another $2 or $3 million that we're never going to get.
Thank you.
Chairman Perkle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Dorfman, I'm up at the front, front, absolutely at the front.
I'm doing a bad job of this today.
That is quite all right. You've actually made my eyes a little bit numb and crossed from some of the data that you brought out. So we have the lowest recorded unemployment rate in this great state.
Yes, sir.
We also have a declining, or the last numbers I saw, and you might have access to more recent numbers than I have, our labor force participation rate has dropped again. So those that are not, can you help to explain the juxtaposition between we're running out of workers to work, yet our labor force participation rate is down, but I've not looked in the last quarter or 6 months.
So we've ticked back up a little bit, but it's still pretty historically low. I can't fully explain it. Economists have been arguing for at least 5 years about why the labor force participation rate, particularly among men, has been going down. It's been going up among women. We know some of the reasons. One thing is the labor force participation rate actually looks at people over 16. You never leave it by retiring. So old people living longer explains part of it. You can find statistics on labor force participation just for people 25 to 54 to get rid of the retiree problem, and it's still kind of historically low. So the explanation isn't just old people. Part of it is disability and chronic pain. We know that a significant percentage of particularly men that have left the labor force are suffering from chronic pain and often are taking drugs to combat that pain. But again, that's part of it, but doesn't explain the whole thing. After that, we're just at a loss. There are people who say it's 20-year-old guys staying home and playing video games, and all kinds of other things. And we just don't know. So I'd love to give you an answer, but we're still fighting about that one.
Senator Harbin. Okay.
Back here in the back. You used the word recession, and of course that's a word that gets everyone's attention when you use the word recession. Can you define the factors that you look at that make up when you know we're in a recession, number one? What are you looking at and to declare that we're in a recession? And then secondly, what's the time frame that a recession is predictable? When I say it occurred, do you know about it 3 months after, 6 months after, a year after? What's the time frame that you use when you declare that there's a recession going on? Kind of looking at a predictor from that standpoint. Could you help us understand that and how
Sure.
that word is used?
Okay, first, I'm pretty sure I only used the word recession in reference to other countries' economies.
Correct, but
Yes,
how would you
for that,
define
just
us?
emphasizing that for the media present. So I'd like that word not to be in the coverage of my remarks today. Sometimes we can see recessions coming fairly clearly in advance. The 2007 to 2009 recession was preceded by a 6 to 12 month fall in consumer confidence, and the real estate sector actually peaked in 2005, so it was going down for a year and a half or 2 years before that recession started. So if you didn't see that one coming, you weren't looking. Sometimes we don't see them until they've already started. Officially, they are not declared until anywhere from usually about a year after they start. There's actually a committee of economists that gets together in a room and decides when the recession officially started, and then they decide when it officially ends. There is no government rule. There is no specific numerical definition. Generally, we think of it as 6 months of the economy shrinking, which means that they have to wait at least 6 months before they declare one started, but they usually wait a little longer. So the things I look for are consumer spending, consumer confidence, personal income. Those have slowed, but are still growing. So I think there is pretty much zero chance we are in a recession now. I don't think we are particularly close to one. The danger is that some big international event sort of throws us in rather quickly. But absent that, I think we're okay.
Representative Knight, David Knight.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Dorfman, I appreciate your comments. I did want to make a remark because I want to make sure there's clarification. Quite frankly, a distinction between what the feds do and what Georgia does in regards to discretionary spending, because for those of us who were here in 07, 08, 09, and 10, believe me, everything is discretionary because the Georgia Constitution makes sure that we live under a balanced budget. So everything is, as far as I know, at our discretion. Yes. From a perspective of expenses, and subject to budget issues, including looking at those budgets to see if they are correctly working and the policies coming out of what we're spending. Specifically, though, I want to make sure though that we look at this. When we look at things like Medicaid and education, especially with Medicaid, I want to make sure our comments are not taken out of context that, would you agree that overspending, wasteful spending in regards to those areas are indeed discretionary items that we should come in and address?
Yes, I completely agree. Obviously, we never want to waste money. And I don't think we automatically owe anybody or any agency funding just because there is a formula or a mechanism that makes it somewhat automatic. What I was saying in my comments was the governor believes it is important to continue fully funding QBE and is working to augment Medicaid spending and coverage in ways that he believes are smart and efficient and of benefit to hardworking Georgians. I believe this legislature generally agrees with those same two principles, and when you add those dollars up, it means a lot of the budget spending is already taken care of. But it is, you are right, it is still ultimately all within your control.
And I think we overall do agree with the governor as far as those priorities, but we do understand that there are ways that we can improve some of the efficiencies and some of the ways that we go about doing this, getting more bang for your buck, if you want to put it that way. Thank you.
Sure.
Senator Jordan.
Good morning, Dr. Dorfman. I think you answered the question a while ago, but I just want to be as clear as possible. With respect to the market facilitator legislation that both houses just passed, that goes into effect April of 2020, the budget projections or the revenue projections do not include any money that you would expect in terms of from that bill. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Representative Kirby.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Right here in the middle. One of your charts at the very end talked about the state funds per capita being back equal to our all-time high. Kind of really put you on the spot. Is that the right number? Or should we be looking down or up? Or where do you think that should be?
Governor Kemp says that's the right number.
How about the state economist?
State economist agrees with his governor.
Thank you.
Senator Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Dorfman, appreciate your presentation this morning. The changes to the federal tax code, we anticipated that less Georgians would itemize on their state return, and the state would, in effect, get a windfall from that. That was part of the impetus of lowering the top rate on the state income tax and doubling the standard deduction. What happened? What did we miss? That's my first question. My second part of that question is, have we seen the full effect of that, or are we going to see any windfall or any benefit going forward?
Sure. So let me answer carefully. So I was not the state economist when those estimates were made. I don't want to throw other economists under the bus here. But there were sort of three things going on. As you said, there was the change between itemized and standard deductions at the federal level, which requires people to make the same change at the state level. That meant we were going to get a bunch of extra money because the state standard deduction was smaller than a lot of people's old itemized deductions that were smaller than the new federal standard deduction. So anybody that was between the two standard deductions with their itemized would be facing a tax increase in Georgia and lots of other states. So every state had to deal with this, or almost every state had to deal with this. We tried to deal with that expected windfall in two ways: by increasing the standard deduction and by lowering the rate by 0.25%. We were unsure enough about the size of the windfall that we were wise enough to schedule the income tax rate cut in two phases, because we wanted to kind of tiptoe up to that line and make sure, and not just drop 0.5% all at once. I think it turns out it was really smart we did that, because what we learned was the change we made in the standard deduction and the 0.25 point cut was enough to fully avoid any windfall. Okay, and Georgia taxpayers were held harmless by those two already. We don't need the additional quarter-point cut to take care of that. I think, without being 100% sure, and I have spent time trying to figure out what went wrong, I think what went wrong was an assumption that the lower rates were actually going to serve as an incentive both for people to work harder and to perhaps declare more income in particular tax years, trying to essentially game the system and take advantage of lower rates. But as I said earlier, the reality is the federal government cut people's income tax rates by a much larger amount, and the change in the state rate just went unnoticed. Even worse, it happened January 1st, which is when most workers' new insurance year starts. And if you get employer-sponsored health insurance, and on January 1st, they raise the employee share, most Georgians probably had their take-home paycheck actually goes down, not up, because the Georgia state income tax cut was smaller than the increase in their health insurance premium. And so nobody even knew they got a tax cut. And if they don't know they got a tax cut, then there isn't going to be any incentive or any growth because of that tax cut. So we did a good job of giving the windfall back to taxpayers. Turned out we did a little better job of doing that than we thought we were doing. And that's about the best I can tell you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're out of time. We're going to take one more question. The others who have questions, if you'd see Ms. Dorfman after the presentation. Former Senator, now Representative Lee Hawkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Agriculture has always been our greatest revenue enhancer, and after Michael hit in 2017, it left $2.5 billion product on the ground. We got a revenue stream of $28 billion, so that's considerable. But since then, in that loss, we lost the transportation income, the packaging and processing income, export income, and even today, we still are losing income from the loss of 47,000 acres of timberland, egg product, and I could go on and on. Has that been a blip on your screen, and are y'all looking at that as far as future revenue loss?
Yes, so the $2.5 billion includes a number of those future impacts. I mean, the Georgia pecan industry is looking at realistically a 15-year-long recovery period. For those of you who don't realize it, first it takes 7 years between when you plant a pecan tree and when you start to get a crop. But also, we lost so many pecan orchards, there are not enough pecan seedlings in the world for us to buy and replace all the trees we lost. So farmers are going to have to stand in line for years waiting just to buy and plant the trees, and then another 7 to 10 years to get back into production. So yeah, it is going to be a 15-year recovery period for Southwest Georgia.
So what is the estimated ongoing revenue loss from that? Do you have a feeling on that?
In terms of state revenue?
Yes.
It probably, by after FY20, you're probably down to about $5 million a year. So it's pretty small at this point, but it's not zero.
Right. Okay.
Dorfman, thank you very much
for
taking all these questions. We appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, let me remind you, if you're not a member of the committee, I see we do have members of the committee who are standing in the back who need a seat. So if you're not a member, I appreciate you considering giving up your seat to a committee member so they can sit and have the room to make notes. Mr. David Curry, the Commissioner of the Department of Revenue. Commissioner Curry.
How you doing? Not necessarily need this. Can I slide it over somewhere? Do what? Okay. Okay.
Katie. Katie.
Let's please give the speaker your attention, ladies and gentlemen. Commissioner, welcome. We're glad to see you this morning. Glad to have you. Thank you. Come in.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman Hill, Chairman England, distinguished members of the committee, special guests. It's an honor and privilege to be with you this morning. On my wonderful drive from Henry County to Atlanta this morning, I was on the phone with another senator. We talked about a constituent matter. He asked me at the end of the conversation what was on my agenda today. I told him I'd be presenting here. The phone went silent, and I thought I'd lost the senator for a moment. I said, "Senator, you still with me?" He said, "Yes, sir, you are, Commissioner." He said, "I was just thinking I was in for a bad day." He said, "Good luck to you today." So I don't know what that meant, but my name is David Curry, a Revenue Commissioner. Been the Revenue Commissioner now for about 8 months. It is truly an honor and privilege to lead that department. The Department of Revenue has 11 regional offices. We have one in Atlanta at Century Center, South Meadow, just west of the airport. We also have 9 regional offices, Albany, Athens, Augusta, Cartersville, Columbus, Douglas, Gainesville, Macon, and Savannah. We have 941 current full-time employees that make up 10 different divisions. Of those divisions, we have 2 legal divisions, ATD being one of them. I call it Tobacco Division, that does the licensing, permit, and enforcement. We also have OSI, Office of Special Investigations, for fraud detection, prevention, and physical security of the facilities. We also have tax compliance, collection of tax and perform audits, tax policy, legal affairs, and regulations, local government services that deal with the 159 different county of tax assessors and tax commissioners and tax digest. We have motor vehicle division where title, register, license, and IRPs. IRP is an opportunity I see here in the state of Georgia. IRP stands for International Road Permit. We have trucking companies that call Georgia home, yet they license their fleets in other states. I believe we're missing an opportunity to serve that particular customer base. It's one of our goals to reach out to that industry and see what we can do to bring that business and that revenue back to the state of Georgia. We also have the Taxpayer Services Division where we do tax returns and processing. Our 5-year trends. Over the last 5 years, we've seen over 1 million more tax returns processed. Roughly 90%, an increase of 4%, are electronic returns. Motor vehicle registrations, we do about 1 million more vehicle registrations today. I know Senator Butch Miller is probably pleased with that. 1 million more motor vehicle registrations today than we did 5 years ago. Unclaimed property, we streamlined that process. 5 years ago, we had 4,400 claims to unclaimed property in local government services. We've seen an increase of 238% because we've put that online and streamlined it. We also have an increase of 78% of the audits we do at the Department of Revenue. The one thing I want to brag on, OSI and the other departments, we've stopped over $1 billion in fraud since FY15. First 7 months of implementation for Drive. Drive started Memorial Day weekend of 2019. We've had over 7.6 million transactions handled between the county and motor vehicle division. Over 280,000 kiosk transactions. That's something that while tax commissioner in Henry County, we brought to Henry County. We're the first county to bring it to the state of Georgia. What I underestimated in that process was changing consumer behavior. Chick-fil-A and Coca-Cola spend millions of dollars every year trying to get that consumer to buy their product. If we miss the consumer, if we, in this case the taxpayer, we have to wait another year to change their behavior. Currently, though, we are seeing a drastic increase in the kiosk usage, which is the ultimate in customer service. These taxpayers can go to Kroger 7 days a week and renew their tag and title and never walk in the door of a tax commissioner's office. We also have processed over 187,000 calls to the motor vehicle desk. When coming on board this past May, one of the issues we had at the Department of Revenue was a call center that was not performing to its best ability.
In one of the particular divisions, we had a 66% abandonment rate and an hour-and-a-half hold times, and I don't believe anybody in this room thinks that's satisfactory. Currently, we've decreased on total, in average, we reduced it from 45 minutes to 60 seconds. We've decreased our average handle time by 20% from 7.26 minutes to 5.81. And we've increased our agent retention, which was a problem we had, by 43% by employee engagement, one-on-one coaching. We also make it a competition with posting their rankings in the office. We get employee feedback and a kudos recognition wall. Normally when I'm here at the Capitol, I'm wearing the lapel pin the governor has given me to wear. Today I'm wearing this lapel pin. I'm wearing it on purpose. We recognize our outstanding employees. We brag on them. We love on them. We show other folks, other employees in the Department of Revenue what we expect. When they go above and beyond, and we're trying to change a culture at Department of Revenue, a tattletale type of culture. Disney first started this. When one employee sees another employee doing something great, we want to hear about it. We bring that employee up. We give them a performance excellence lapel pin, and you might be surprised at just how well this has went over. They really do respond well to that public recognition. But we're here today to talk about the budget. Our budget for FY20 reduction is 5.9% for FY20 and 8.6% FY21. What that equates to for FY20 is $10 million and FY21 $14.6 million. We try to concentrate the approach in three different areas. We implemented operational efficiencies, we realigned staffing levels, and eliminated unnecessary expenses. 48% come from operational efficiencies. Part of that is printage and posting. We saved $660,000 with eliminating unnecessary printing. The 1099-G form is something you would receive in the mail if you had unemployment insurance benefits or received a tax refund the previous year. Other states quit printing this. We followed up with them. We felt like this was an operational efficiency that we could do. That we didn't need to print these notices because all that information is on our website. We eliminated one floor for FY20, which saved us $330,000, and 2 floors for FY21 of $660,000. I met with the CIO, Tom McMurray. He said we're now paying for custom servers that we don't need. We need standard servers. That saved us $480,000 for FY20 and $1.1 for FY21. Another avenue that I wasn't crazy about when I came on board was the use of private collection agencies. When I was Henry County Tax Commissioner, I did not farm out collections to third party. I didn't feel like the third party had the best interest of the consumer or the taxpayer at heart. They were trying to collect that revenue. We want to take care of the Georgia taxpayer. We feel like we can set up a payment plan. We feel like we can provide that excellent customer service better than a third party can. That's going to save us $1.8 million. Also, vendor dedicated developers. That's going to save us about $700,000 FY21. Full-time employees, 45% of our reduction came from that. FY20 is $1.5 million, FY21 is $2.9. These were unfilled positions. This was not a reduction in workforce. We also eliminated open positions for contractors of $1.5 million for FY20 and $1.6 for FY21. Last but not least, the unnecessary expenses. This equated to about 7% of the reduction. Telecommunications. We eliminated landlines and went to desks that nobody sat. We were paying AT&T for a phone that nobody ever answered. Nobody knew what the phone number was. We looked at laptops, Wi-Fi's. We looked at Verizon phones that were sitting on a shelf somewhere. We eliminated $175,000 worth of electronics that we didn't need. That was for the first year. That equates to $230,000 for FY21. Travel and conferences, we took a look. Where do we need to go and why do we need to be there? If we can handle a conference in-house, we will. That saved us $208,000 for FY20 and $222,000 for FY21. And we also moved away from Chronos and went to a state time and labor system for employee time clock. Improvements and initiatives. Again, while at Henry County, we implemented the Malcolm Baldrige criteria. Some of you have heard me talk about that before. You benchmark everything that matters in your organization. You see where you're at, and then you look to see how you can improve. And you won't always get it right the first time, but you're constantly looking for improvement. That's what we're looking for. We're looking for performance excellence. We're going to partner Malcolm Baldridge criteria to Six Sigma. We've hired a new Chief Performance Officer, Dr. Georgia Steele. She's going to come in and lead that initiative. We're eliminating unnecessary hurdles for business. We're making it easier for someone to start a business in Georgia by going to our website. We got a step-by-step process. Improvement to government interfaces and customer service. The Georgia Tax Center, making it more user-friendly. We are drastically improved the hold time to call abandonment rates I've already discussed, and extended our call center. It's something else we bought from Henry County. We extended the call center to 6:30. We average about 600 calls daily. Not everybody works 8 to 5. Not everybody can make a phone call during those hours. We've seen a drastic reduction in our phone calls. Typically, at 8 o'clock, the phone calls would spike. We've seen it average out over the entire day, staying open until 6:30. We're strengthening rural Georgia. As economists said, 80% of the new, or 79% of the new business coming into the state of Georgia now is in rural Georgia. We're also doing that with our collections cases. We're spreading those out through rural Georgia. Our performance excellence initiative, which I already talked about, we're improving Department of Revenue's culture, enhancing overall customer service, becoming passionate about continuous improvement and employee involvement, and I want to make Department of Revenue a truly great place to work. With legislation, first let me say thank you. We need a marketplace facilitator, so thank you for passing that. That is a tool we need to capture the sales tax revenue from this e-commerce. We're also seeing from House Bill 329 2018 session, the TAVIT rate changes will reduce to 7% to 6.6. This will carry through June 30th of 23. And the tax rate for Welcome to Georgia, we're reducing it down to 3%. We're also seeing changes in the 529 savings plan, increases deductible amounts for Georgia 529 plan, effective 2020 tax year, so it'll be next year, for $2,000 to $4,000 for single filers and $4,000 to $8,000 for joint filers. Quality job tax credit changes, House Bill 224 2019 session lowered the 50 job threshold to 10 jobs in Tier 1 rural counties and 25 jobs in Tier 2. With that being said, that's a quick overview of our budget and what we're doing at the Department of Revenue, and I welcome any questions.
Okay, Senator Huffstetler.
Thank you, Commissioner, for being here, and several of us pushed the marketplace facilitator out knowing that we had heard it was your department's #1 priority, and we're glad that that's taken care of for now. You know, we talked a good bit about the tax bill from 2018 and the reduction in rate that was done. The original sponsor of that was the late Chairman Jay Powell, but he also had another bill, House Bill 811, that he sponsored, along with his top two signers being the current Chair of Ways and Means and the Chair of Appropriations, that would use data analytics to identify non-compliant taxpayers in Georgia. Now, I realize you weren't here when that started, but he and others believe there was significantly more revenue in that than in Marketplace. Can you tell us your plans going forward on that?
We have conducted a pilot program, or we've put a pilot program for RFP. We've had 3 particular companies respond to the RFP. We're now drafting the language. We expect it to be ready within 30 days. I know there's a lot of opinions on what's out there that's uncollected, and we're willing to see. We want to see what's out there. But we did our homework too. We reached out to the home states where these companies come from, and we have. I'm just not completely 100% convinced that the numbers are what they say they are. But if there's anything out there that needs to be collected, we want to hear about it, we want to collect it. But I don't want to spend that money before we know exactly what they identify. Also, to go along with that, when the bill was passed, there was no funding mechanism put in place. Every dollar we collect has to be turned over to the Treasury. So these third-party vendors coming in, we need some place, some way, some pathway to get them paid. And we can't shave it off the top without legislation. So that's something that if we take a look at this and we feel like there's value to it, we're going to come back to the legislators and ask for a way to pay these vendors.
Representative Martin.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you for your information. Thank you for the efficiencies we've got. I think that's what we all look for in a place where, as the economist said earlier, 80% of our spending is quote-unquote non-discretionary, so efficiencies is the way we drive that out. Along those lines, I guess my question is, have you shared this with the other departments? Because I know under the universal system we have for telephone and computer technology that's managed through GTA, we buy that in bulk through some large carriers. My guess is if your department had lines sitting around that weren't answered, they're all over the state. You're the first department we're seeing. Are we going to see that other places in the budget, or was that the best kept secret you had for this year?
Well, being new to state government, and I will tell you, state government is a lot different than local government. I certainly didn't share that. It wasn't on purpose. We were busy trying to meet our budget reductions and doing what we could to be fiscal responsible. But if they want to know how we did it, I'll be happy to bring them into the Department of Revenue and show them.
To our chairman, I hope we take him up on that.
Representative Knight.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner, welcome. You have certainly stepped into a pretty big department and probably one of the most important departments that the state has. I know for years the General Assembly, both the Ways and Means Committee and the Senate Finance have invested tremendously in the technology to make sure that our department was doing just as you had said, being up to date, user friendly, making sure we're using technology correctly. So again, I want to applaud you and just again echo what you said as far as the importance. We look at the fraud prevention, the billions of dollars that would have gone out the door had not been for the good work of the Department of Revenue. So in that sense, I want to say thank you. It's very important what you do. Not only what we collect, but what we should collect or what fraudulently goes out the door that we need to be aware of. But on a harder note, a much harder note, I know there was a certain revenue ruling that came out in November, and I want to make sure that you know, there is a distinction between the department and the General Assembly as far as legislation. And I know that revenue ruling dealt with a jet fuel exemption that I believe by the language in the code and what most members in here voted for or against was a sunset provision that went out. And I understand that your revenue ruling said that our language and what we voted on made it permanent. I would very respectfully disagree to that end.
Yes, sir.
Because I don't think that the members in here voted to make that a permanent exemption. So that may be something we need to deal with.
We certainly can. And I know that was I'll be honest with you, coming to a job 5 months into it, knowing how important that decision was, certainly wasn't easy, and I wasn't careless about coming up with that ruling. We reached out to our legal policy. I asked for their interpretation. We then went to the attorney's office and asked if they felt like our interpretation was accurate. I'll share with this committee, there was one particular word that in the language, it was indefinitely. What did that mean? We know that language put in bills is not haphazardly inserted. So what was the intent? And trying to understand the intent of the legislation and make a decision, and not being here when that legislation was passed, we felt like indefinitely created a vagueness. And that's when we made that ruling. Now, this legislative body is certainly within the powers be can change past legislation to stop that. But we tried to get the intent, and I really did. I really tried to get the intent of the legislation. And I will tell you, after that ruling came out, I had several phone calls that were obviously not in favor of that. But with that being said, I truly tried to interpret what I felt like the legislation or the language of the legislation stated.
Representative Black.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner, do you have any current figures on the average back taxes, interest, and penalties that your average auditor collects each year?
Per auditor, I do
Right.
not, but I can certainly get that for you. I don't have, you talking about per auditor?
Right.
No, sir, I don't have it with me today, but I can get it to you.
You made reference to part of your adjustments and reduction calls for eliminating some positions that had not been filled.
Yes, sir.
Were any of them auditors?
There was some, most of the were CSRs, people like that, customer service reps. We're not eliminating anything that's going to have a negative effect on our collections. We feel like we can become better. We feel like we can collect more money with the program we've got in place today.
Back in '08, when the recession really hit, we let go a bunch of auditors, and at that time, they were collecting $18 for every dollar being spent on collectors, on auditors.
18 to 1?
18 to 1.
Okay, I'll be happy to get it for you.
Thank you.
Mason?
Representative Watson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Right here, Commissioner.
How you doing?
Appreciate you being here today, and I appreciate your efforts to change the culture. And along the same lines as Senator Black, I was just curious in the tax compliance. I noticed that there was pretty good savings there in the collection, reducing those contracts down. Do you know how much taxes those contracts, how much were they bringing in? I think there was $6 million in contracts. How much revenue were those contractors bringing in for the state?
I can get that number for you. I don't know exactly what they were bringing in, but we do know we restructured our collection accounts and pushing those out to rural Georgia. We rescore them. In other words, in the past, if you were assigned to Albany, you only worked cases in that area, and maybe the cases you were working in the area scored a 1, 5 being a higher priority. We are now reassigning cases that may be in Atlanta area that's a higher priority, assigning them to Albany to collect that higher revenue. We truly feel like this will generate more revenue for the state, and let's not forget the 7.9% that we end up having to pay these third party. When we send these notices out and we can work out individual payment plans, again, something else that we try to do in Henry County, we find that most people, they understand they have a tax debt. They understand they've got to pay their delinquent taxes. A lot of times they avoid the situation, but if you can get them to a payment plan and work with them, that's 7.9% interest that the state of Georgia is going to get that the third party would normally get. So we feel like we can do a better job collecting, and at the end of that, the state of Georgia also gets that extra interest.
Okay, one more follow-up, Mr. Chairman. The drive system,
Yes,
is it fully operational and up and running, and are the savings in the budget what the state's receiving from the implementation of that new program?
I don't know what projected a couple of years ago for the system, but Drives is up and running. We had a few hiccups early on, but we worked through programming and get those corrected. They call them SQRs. When I first got on the floor up there at the 15th floor, my first question was, what's an SQR? We didn't use that term in Henry County, but it's basically a change request. We had a lot of SQRs in the system. We've made drastic improvements to Drives. We continue to work with FAST to see those improvements. We feel confident Drives will be the way of the future. We also are transitioning the second part of that. Department of Driver Services is picking up their portion of Drives now, and they're moving forward. So we feel very confident in where we are with Drives. We feel like it's a very efficient system, and it's like any other new program. It's going to take refresh every 18 months, 18 to 24 months, just like a Windows 10 or the new program software. But it keeps you up to date. You won't have this 20-year lag in the future that you have to completely turn things over and start fresh. So we feel very confident that it'll serve the state well.
Okay. Well, appreciate what you're doing, and I hope everything works out like it's supposed to.
Thank you. Me too.
Representative Dickerson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Commissioner. Here I am right here.
Okay.
I would like to thank you for the kiosk systems that you've put in. Are they throughout the whole state? I've used one, and it took me less than 5 minutes to get my tags.
Well, they're offered throughout the state, and when I say that now, if a rural county or small county doesn't have the population to support their own kiosk, oftentimes a larger county can have one, but there's participating counties surrounding that larger county. They certainly participate. They don't have a kiosk in their county, but they can drive to the next county over and use it. That surrounding county only has to sign up and give them basically an account for them to deposit their money. That's one of the things we try to do again in Henry. We try to get Lamar and Spalding and Butts County and all the surrounding counties to participate because it was basically free revenue for them. Henry County was paying for the kiosk to be there. These other counties had to support by giving a checking account so the revenue would go somewhere. So yes, they're accessible throughout the state, but ITI, the company that created the kiosk, there's got to be a financial model for that kiosk to be sustainable within the county. So if a small rural county cannot do that, they'll put one in the next county over that maybe can.
Okay, thank you. It's been a success in my county. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rockdale.
Rockdale, yes.
Got time for a couple more questions. Representative Houston.
Thank you. Getting back to the bill that we passed about the tax credit, about the taxes for Delta, we had a person who's no longer here who was in the House, was a great legal mind, and he was quite upset about your ruling. Was this your ruling, or did the Attorney General rule on this too, or just the
we asked for their opinion. It was our ruling. Look, I am not going to stand up here and lay blame.
So the Attorney General did rule on this?
The State Attorney General. I ask for interpretation. So if this is wrong, hear this clear. This falls on David Curry. I don't want anyone here to think that this ruling was the Attorney General's ruling or our legal counsel. I ask for a ruling. At the end of the day, it stops with me. So if I got it incorrect, it falls to my feet.
Are you an attorney?
No, ma'am, I'm not. That's why I asked for legal counsel.
Thank you.
Senator Jordan. Last question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner, is the Department of Revenue looking into the undervaluation, I'm right over here.
Okay, thank you.
Of commercial property in Fulton County that's resulted in residential property owners bearing more of the overall tax burden?
Okay, could you repeat the first part of it? I didn't hear the first part of it.
I'm sure you know before you came on the job that there's been tension between Fulton County and DOR for a long time in terms of the tax digest, correct?
There has been.
Specifically, it usually deals with the residential property tax digest, but of late, it's come to light that actually the commercial properties in Fulton County are sorely undervalued, which of course then affects the tax revenue that comes from those commercial tax evaluations. Are y'all looking into that at all in terms of the overall digest?
Tax assessors across the state of Georgia are required to assess property and valuations through uniformity clauses. We can certainly take a look at it. That's not, I'll be honest with you, it's not the top of the priority list today when I reported the work, but I'll certainly be happy to take a look at it. I assume that tax assessor in Fulton County is using the uniformity. They get scored every year. If they're not, they're in violation and we can handle that. But I'll be happy to take a look.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner, we've run out of time. We appreciate very much you being here this morning answering the questions. If you have questions you didn't get answered, please see the Commissioner afterwards. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Morning, Commissioner. We're glad to have you this morning. The floor is yours.
Chairman, thank you very much.
Please give the Commissioner your attention, please.
Happy New Year, everybody. It's great to see you again. So today we'll walk through the 20 and 21 governor's budget. So this is a little bit of a generalization, but our department really can be divided into three pots: personnel, marketing, and administration. So through this process, we ask our 8 divisions to review their budgets, to find ways to modernize, streamline services, and look at new technologies to, of course, accomplish our goals, but we also had to meet our 4% and 6% cuts. So those of you who've worked with me a number of years know that I was in Governor Perdue's office when we did this in 2007, 2008, 2009, when we, with the General Assembly, cut $4 billion from the state budget. And so personally, I learned a lot during that process, and I think the professionals at the Department of Economic Development did as well. We really worked to make cuts that are strategic, and you're not going to see any across-the-board cuts in this budget. You're going to see the department work to make sure that we were cutting in a way that did not impact our overall mission. So with that, I'm going to walk through these cuts, and what you're going to see is there were a lot of decisions that came down to whether you cut personnel or whether you cut marketing. But our goal was to continue to maintain the momentum that the department and the state have, of course, experienced over the last 8 years. So since our cuts are very similar in 20 and 21, if it's okay, Chairman, I'm going to walk through both at the same time, except for tourism, which is a little bit different in how we had to handle that one. So I'm going to start with the Departmental Administration. So the cut in the Departmental Administration was to reduce funds for operations in FY20 of $171,070, and then in FY21, $269,929. So administration really is our most flexible player in our budget. It's where we have the most opportunity to cover items that come up through the year, but this is also where we have the most opportunity to across-the-board cut. This is the one area where you're going to see that we just took percentage cuts across the board in both years. That comes out of telecom, computers, equipment, rent, and marketing. So film and video, the film and video and music division. Reduce funds for marketing to reflect projected expenditures, FY20, $46,000, and FY21, $68,486,000. So film also is broken down really into 2 groups, personnel and marketing. We use marketing money for business recruitment, sponsorships, and our Film Ready Communities program. And so we are going to cut marketing in both of those years to make sure we still have the bodies needed to serve the industry that is continuing to do business in Georgia. Georgia Council for the Arts. So GCA is broken out into 2 lines. One is our state spending, and one covers the grant programs. So in the first line, you'll see that's personnel, administration, program, telecom, rent, and so forth. So reduce funds for operations to reflect projected expenditures, FY20 of $15,000 and FY21 of $15,000. So GCA has minimal personnel and administration budget, and there's not a lot of flexibility there. So we took the same amount in both years, and we'll cover that cost by higher cuts in the administration budget, which I already went over. Reduce funds for grants and benefits, FY20 of $40,000, and then FY21 of $300,000. So many of you know the grant process for the Georgia Council for the Arts starts almost as soon as the budget is signed. And so a number of the FY20 grants were already out the door, so we didn't have a lot of flexibility. 2 of those that have not been awarded yet are the Vibrant Communities grants and the Cultural Facilities grants, and those will be reduced by $40,000 this year. In FY21, we'll look at the Cultural Facilities Grant as our cut. That is the most recent program that was given to the Georgia Council for the Arts. This was the first year that the Facilities Grant was given. It is the one grant that really is the least established grant, and you don't have communities that are expecting it. So I think that's probably the easiest place to find that cut. In global commerce, several lines that we decided to make cuts this year. Reduce funds for contractual services. FY20 of $215,000, FY21 of $215,000. Reduce funds for marketing. FY20, $215,000, FY21, $430,000, and then reduce funds for regular operating expenses of $60,226 in FY21. So global commerce is, of course, our business recruitment division. Majority of that budget really comes down to personnel, marketing, and contracts. So over the years, we've learned that it's tough to navigate international labor laws with state employees overseas. So our international offices are on a contractual basis. We decided to decrease our contract funding by $215,000 for both years, 20 and 21. So there's some backstory there. In 2014, the General Assembly and the governor gave us a significant bump in our contracting as we tried to grow our presence in China. We never really saw the return on that investment that we had expected. And so we decided to take that money, and we actually promoted from within. We hired somebody who is doing a great job, but it gave us some significant savings. We were going to take that savings and move it into Korea, which is actually where our hottest market right now. But the timing couldn't be better. As we made that decision, we will offer that money back to the General Assembly for FY20 and 21. And then additionally, we're going to cut our marketing budget by $215,000 in FY20 and $430,000 in 21. And we're going to hold an unfilled position open to create that additional $60,000 cut in FY21. So generally in global commerce, we made the decision to protect the people who work the projects and continue to be terribly busy thanks to the great business environment you guys have created here in Georgia. And so we don't want to hinder our ability to work those projects that continue to come to the state. So international relations and trade. Reduce funds for marketing, FY20 of $122,500, and then FY21, $171,627. So trade is really our de facto small business team. You guys have heard me tout the impact that trade has all over the state for a number of years. They continue to help companies find new markets. And y'all know that generally Coca-Cola is not looking for states' help in finding new markets. So we work really with small businesses. Last year, the companies in really every corner of the state that we worked with saw a benefit, a tremendous benefit. And so our team here at the department worked over 2,000 Georgia companies last year. 82% of those had less than 100 employees, and 50% of those had less than 20 employees. So marketing is where we're going to make our cuts because we need the people to continue to work with those companies. We want to protect those folks and our international offices that assist on the ground. And so what that means in practical purposes is that our team is not going to be able to participate in as many industry events, trade shows, and we'll cut back on travel. But we will focus on the companies that they continue to help all over the state. Our Rural Initiatives team reduced funds for personal services and reflect projected expenditures FY20 of $75,000 and FY21 of $75,000. And so there's a backstory here in that we had an employee that was moved last year in our budget from global commerce to rural initiatives. He's no longer with the department, and so the difference in his salary and fringe allows us to give back $75,000 to the budget. So this actually will not impact the division and their ability to serve communities at all. Small and minority business development, reduced funds for contractual services, $40,010 in FY20 and $60,000 in FY21. So we are going to reduce our marketing funds in both years in this division, and this really impacts the Small Business Rockstars program, but I do think it is something that we can handle. And then tourism. Now I'm going to discuss tourism separately over the two different fiscal years because we had to do some different things. In FY20, reduced funds for personal services, $344,045. Reduced funds for marketing to recognize savings from the closure of Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport Visitors Information Center of $125,000, and then reduced funds for marketing, $250,950. So for FY20, we had some tough decisions to make here. And so what we decided to do to manage these cuts was to not hire several open positions that we have. Right now, we're going to keep 2 positions open and likely combine duties and move those around. And then we also held off hiring our deputy commissioner to help cover some of those costs in FY20 as well. Additionally, several years ago, you guys may remember that we opened a Visitors Information Center at Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport. So that was a partnership with the Atlanta Convention and Visitors Bureau. And it turns out ACVB needed more space. And so we have dissolved the partnership. And so our money will revert back to the state. The good thing is they continue to handle the statewide tourism there as well. So we're actually we come out doing pretty well in that partnership. And then we're going to reduce marketing as well. And then in FY21, increase funds for employees making less than $40,000. So that's a $48,000, $570 increase. And so if you look at that, those really are our visitor information centers around the state. Many of you have probably dropped in there on your way to and from the state. I would recommend that you do it because you will see some of the most amazing people in those offices really talking about the great things going on in Georgia. This raise will make an impact for them. Transfer 2 VICs to DNR Parks, Recreation, and Historic Sites Program, $277,461. Reduce funds for marketing of $299,032. Fund the Georgia Historical Society's Marker Program with existing appropriations of $160,000 and eliminate one-time funding of $100,000. Reduce funds for the Hartsfield-Jackson VIC, $125,000. Fund Georgia Civil War's Heritage Trails with existing appropriations of $50,000. Eliminate one-time funds for marketing materials of $25,000. Eliminate one-time funds for Visitor Information Center grants, $150,000, and then reduce funds for 2 vacant positions, $149,320. So as many of you know, the state runs 11 Visitor Information Centers across the state. So 9 of those are on interstates. And again, you see them whether you're coming in on 85 in Livonia or in Ringgold or at Tallapoosa, and 13 million visitors a year go to those visitors information centers. And the one thing that I've worked in those centers, and the one thing that is shocking to me are the number of people who go to those centers. They're coming to Georgia and they don't know where they're going to stay and they don't know where they're going, how to get there. And so those visitor information centers really serve a significant purpose. 2 of those VICs are different. The VIC in Sylvania is the oldest visitor information center in the United States and is on the National Historic Register. And then the one in Plains, which of course is there because of President Carter, and people visiting Plains visit that visitor information center. What makes those two different than the rest of the visitor information centers are they are destination visitor information centers. They are not centers where people are necessarily going to find out where to visit the rest of the state. They're not trying to figure out how to get around Atlanta without hitting traffic. They are going there to visit those visitor information centers. And so I believe that this is a good move because going to the Parks, Recreation, and Historic Sites program, that's what these are. These are much more in line with parks than with what we do in partnership with the Department of Transportation. Secondly, we're going to reduce our marketing funds again. We cut the Hartsville-Jackson VIC by the same amount as 20. We're going to eliminate funding for the RVIC grants. Those regional visitor information center grants were established last year. It was a program that came back from years ago. I think it was cut when we started cutting the budget in 2008. And so that, of course, since it was just reestablished, communities are not expecting it again. And then we're going to reduce funds for the 2 vacant positions in Fringe. Like I said, we're going to combine duties and look for opportunities to streamline that team. And so then there were additional pass-through agencies that were cut as well. $100,000 from the Georgia Historic Society marker program, and I'm sure Dr. Gross will speak to that. And then cuts to the Georgia Civil War Heritage Trails program by $25,000. Those monies really just flow through our department, so we don't have a real say in those. So that's the end of our budget section. Once again, I really want to thank you guys for the support that you've given over the years. This department has continued to do some great things around the state because of the support the General Assembly has given us. So I do want to say that. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions, Chairman.
Representative Pruitt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First off, let me say that our economic development of the state of Georgia is the envy of many, many states. You've always done a great job and appreciate what you're doing now. It continues to be something that, like I said, other states envy. But I'd have a couple questions. One is, does any of your reductions impact the Center of Innovation or the Quick Start program?
So Quick Start, I'll start there, is under Technical College System of Georgia. And so it does not, our budget does not impact Quick Start. The Center of Innovation program is under the One Georgia funding, and so that would be impacted by just overall One Georgia funding approved by the One Georgia Board.
Thank you, sir.
Senator Lucas.
Thank you. Question. I keep hearing you talking about you cutting in marketing. What about Southwest Georgia? We've got a lot of money invested in George Bagby State Park in Clay County. And I have not seen your department do anything to actually push that park being used. It's efficient, you got a golf course, they got places that residents can stay, and a great big conference center that's not being used.
Senator, I personally have been down there. It's a beautiful conference center. We work hand in hand with DNR and the state park system to market jointly. And have for a number of years. But I believe that we do very good marketing when it comes to focusing on our state park system. You're spot on. That is a beautiful part of the state of Georgia, and will continue to be in our marketing materials.
Representative Al Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank Commissioner for being here. Here I am.
Where are you? There you are.
Couple of things. The one word I've heard used when it comes to cuts more than any has been marketing. I get nervous because having been in the life insurance business one time, when things get tight, the first thing people drop is the life insurance. And it's usually shortly thereafter that they wish they hadn't. So I just want to drop that on you briefly. Now, marketing is vital. And one of the things I found, and I know Alabama funds it differently. I know all the answers I've heard through the years. But I still see Robert Trent Jones everywhere, and I don't hear nothing about dear old Georgia. And I can drive all over, and I'm looking at I was going to Mississippi. It wasn't on my bucket list for Christmas, but I ended up there. And I saw ads for Robert Trent Jones, but we're cutting marketing. And my experience is we've never had a great budget for marketing anyhow. So I don't know where the cuts are going to come from. But the most important thing I really wanted to ask you about, and you can answer all three of them.
Sure. Representative Williams, thank you.
One second, I got
Sorry.
the 800-pound gorilla is now coming. I saved it for effect.
Okay, all right.
Now, there is an opening in your tourism director after Lisa left. I've heard from several. Felt that opening is felt. There's a lot of your smaller folk, they were going there trying. They got a lot of help from Lisa. That is not true now. It's all over the place. Is that one of the spots you're not going to refill? If it is, I'd just like to know if you are going to refill it, how long? Because people are feeling it.
So we are actively looking to fill that role right now. And so, in fact, I just had some conversations this morning, Representative Williams. So absolutely. And I agree with you. Lisa did a fantastic job of organizing that division and really reaching out to communities and doing some new things. So we've got a high bar to fill. When it comes to the Robert Trent Jones Golf Course and of course, our marketing, the one difference we have, and I'll separate those out. The one difference we have with Alabama and Robert Trent Jones is the state owns all those golf courses, and so we do a lot of work to market our state golf courses in the state park system, but marketing private courses does fall under what we do, which is we are going for sportsmen, we're going for fishermen, we're going for golfers. We do a lot of targeted marketing for that, but we don't have there is not a consortium of state park or state golf courses that we can market as a state. We have to leave it up to our private sector friends on that piece. And then overall marketing-wise, we're lucky in that right now we are very busy. The economy is booming. And so you have to make a decision on whether to have the bodies to continue that momentum, or are we looking to fill the pipeline down the road? And so right now, because we are so busy, we had to cut marketing because I need those people to continue doing the job. In the future, there will be an impact because you're obviously going to see a diminishing return because we cannot go out and market like we usually have. My hope is that if we continue to work these projects that are coming in, the economy will continue to grow and we can come back here in another year and talk about increases.
Representative Jackson, Mac Jackson.
Chairman, I think William covered my question too, Commissioner. I was just concerned that the marketing of the state, we definitely want Georgia to be marketed.
Absolutely.
And with the cuts, how are we going to get that done if we're cutting marketing?
To say that we're going to have to be more strategic in how we market. One of the great things about the way the world has changed is we can reach more people cheaper than we ever have. And so being able to focus on social media and we just had Tourism Day downstairs a minute ago. One of the things that we announced today is that for the first time ever, if you get the new travel guide, the front of the travel guide is a collage of pictures instead of just one picture that highlights the state. And those pictures actually came from people that are traveling to Georgia. This is the first time that we ever took locally sourced pictures and used that for our travel. It really is, there are two things there. I mean, it highlights what people are actually doing, what they're enjoying. With other pieces, it's cheaper. I don't have to have a bunch of photo crews out trying to take pictures all over the state. And so it makes we as a department have to be smarter about how we spend that marketing money. But again, the great thing about technology is as it changes, and it changes daily, we have more opportunities to reach more people at a lesser cost.
Thank you. Representative Penny Houston.
Get back to the golf courses in Alabama. I think, didn't the Alabama Teachers Retirement Fund that? And
yes, ma'am.
if we took money out of our teacher retirement for a golf course, I don't think any of us would be here.
I think you're right.
And another thing about the state parks. We really have a gem in our state parks,
Absolutely.
and I hope that y'all would reach out and help Department of Natural Resources. That's where we need marketing. We're not, and you might be doing some marketing, but we don't see it in South Georgia. And I know we've got Patrick's Fishing Paradise in my district, and the signage, and we just got to really get on it. And we passed a bill to give money to our state parks to promote it through a fee that we would get, and I hope y'all are using some of that money to promote state parks.
Absolutely. We work jointly with the state park system, and you're absolutely right. We have, I patron our parks on a regular basis, and they're nicer than they've ever been. They do a tremendous job.
They're doing a good job, but we need more help.
Absolutely. We'll continue that.
And I will get with y'all later on to see exactly, maybe our representatives could point out some things in their local state parks that we would like attention to.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for the job you're doing.
Thank you.
Representative Mary Margaret Alvaler.
Thank you, sir. Does the Department of Economic Development have any statutory obligation to evaluate tax credits or other incentive packages given to industries coming to Georgia? And if the answer to that is no, who does have the statutory obligation to evaluate those programs?
So, of course, we at the Department of Economic Development only take what companies say they're going to do. So if I'll give you an example. Takeda coming to Covington, they say they're going to create 1,800 jobs and $1.6 billion of investment. So all we do is tell them if they live up to their statutory requirements, what that incentive could be worth. And so, if that's a mega tax incentive, it could be a significant amount of money. So we create an MOU with them. They go into a binding document that says that they are going to create X amount of jobs in X amount of years. And so that protects us from the discretionary. And then on the back end, the Department of Revenue has the control over dealing with what they actually bring to Georgia.
On the back end, is it true or not true then that the Revenue Department has a statutory opportunity to take away incentives that have been granted to them in their plan?
Well, the great thing about the way we do incentives in this state for job creation is you actually have to create the job in order to get the credit. And so the only way that would be impacted is if a company creates 1,800 jobs and then decreases, fires 600. And then absolutely the Department of Revenue has the ability to go back and handle that. But for us, as taxpayers, a company, and the General Assembly over many years has been great in how they structured that, the company actually has to create that job in order to realize that credit.
One follow-up, if I may, Mr. Chair. The incentive packages are far beyond job tax credits. There are other kinds of incentive packages. Is there any one place that evaluates those incentive packages in the global sense? And I'll just ask you to respond specifically to the film credit.
So the film credit is different in that it is, of course, the credit is transferable. It's different than every other credit we have. But that credit, we as a department, all we do is say, if a company comes to us and says, all right, we're gonna film in Savannah, and this is what the film looks like, this is what our spend is gonna be like, this is what our room nights are gonna look like, all we do is certify that they meet the requirement of the tax credit. We give them a letter, they go out and they and then they film. It's up to them on the back end to go to the Department of Revenue, and they have to file all that information. The piece of paper we give them doesn't mean anything. It does not. They don't have to live up to any of the things that they say. It just says that, of course, what they're telling us is real. And so they then have to go to, then it's the Department of Revenue that has to follow through and make sure that they actually spend it, that this is the credit that they deserved. And so that is, the film tax credit is different than a jobs tax credit, which if a company is coming to Georgia, again, they have to actually create those jobs in order to get the credit. Now, discretionary is different. It is a very small amount of what would be in any incentive package. And that is, they have to live up to the jobs and the investment that they say they're going to bring, or we claw it back. And so they have 5 years to live up to that. And the Department of Community Affairs monitors that on the back end, and they do a great job. And so we stay in contact with them on a regular basis to make sure that the discretionary money that we put into projects, again, which is a small percentage of projects that come to Georgia, that they actually live up to what they are going to say what they say they're going to do. And that's we have an MOU and a P&A on all of that to cover the state's taxpayers.
Commissioner, we're out of time. Appreciate very much you being here this morning. Ladies and gentlemen, if you've got questions, additional questions, please stop the commissioner as he leaves and get your questions answered. Appreciate you being here. Thank you very much.
Chairman, thank you. Appreciate your time.
Our next speaker is Commissioner Gary Black, the Department of Agriculture. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're leaving the room, please leave quietly. Come on up, Commissioner. We're ready for you. Hey, Gary. Good morning, sir. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Joint Committee. It's good to be with you this morning, ladies and gentlemen. Before I begin a review of the budget, please afford me the opportunity to offer a Hurricane Michael recovery report. 14 months ago, you answered the call of leadership by providing unparalleled support to Georgia's farm families impacted by Hurricane Michael. I'm very grateful for the cooperation and support of the Georgia Forestry Commission and my good friend and your former colleague, Chuck Williams. Chuck and his team provided magnificent expertise throughout the implementation of the Forest Timber Cleanup Program. Thus far, we have funded 478 landowner projects at a cost of $7.3 million. You entrusted the leadership of this program and the Safety 21 Bridge Loan Program to the board members and staff of the Georgia Development Authority. Thomas Carter and his team of professionals, with guidance and wisdom from a very skilled board of directors, implemented this program within 90 days of passage. By May, we had funded 276 loans totaling $74.8 million for an average of $280,000 per producer loan. Ladies and gentlemen, many of the farm families in this state would not have farmed in 2019 without your help. Mr. Chairman, I ask for permission to recognize Thomas, if I could. Thomas Carter, would you please, he's in the back, y'all. Thomas, you and your team deserve the accolades of every Georgian and we appreciate your hard work over this last year. Y'all join me, please. It's a great honor to work with this board, and the Development Authority has been attached to the department since its inception, and actually it goes back to really to the 30s as our Rural Rehabilitation Corporation. So it's been a long and important history, but we've still got a lot of work to do. And so Thomas, thanks for joining us today. We're very close to implementing the long overdue state block grant program, authorized by Congress and signed into law by President Trump on June 6, 2019. Georgia is slated to receive $347 million of the original $800 million appropriated for state recovery block grants. Before the Christmas recess, Congress set aside an additional $400 million in a second tranche of funding. Georgia's portion of this second tranche is still yet to be determined. I assembled an experienced work group in June to develop Georgia's state plan. We submitted our plan to USDA on June 28th, the only state to do so on time. Throughout the summer and fall, we worked to design formulas and strategies that we believe to best serve the needs of our producer families. It has been a long ordeal. I am cautiously expectant that by mid-February, recovery assistance will become a reality. The enrollment portal will be farmrecovery.com. Our Georgia Department of Agriculture team will be administering the program specifically for pecan, fruit and vegetable, poultry, beef, dairy, timber, and uninsured infrastructure losses caused by Hurricane Michael. I will have more firm launch information for you very soon. I thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me to briefly discuss these very important topics. Mr. Chairman, the budget for the Georgia Department of Agriculture and attached agencies may be found in the governor's budget proposal, his report, starting on page 89. The Georgia Department of Agriculture complied with the August budget and strategic planning directives. I admit to confusion, for I've never viewed across-the-board cuts as a method of implementing strategic planning. It is important to note that every action of this department has been governed by a strategic plan that was developed and is a living, breathing document. It's 9 years old. Under the August directives, we eliminated 18 full-time vacant and 7 part-time vacant positions. 6 employees were terminated over a phased schedule beginning October 1. Additionally, 4 call center employees were released when the contract was terminated. Lest anyone misunderstand, these critical positions in food safety, animal industry, meat inspection, and marketing were not positions held in reserve on the books. These were vacant positions that we have or would have been trying to fill. But due to the competitive job market, we simply have not been able to find qualified applicants for the starting salaries on our given scale. Additionally, we cut $161,000 of program support for the Georgia Grown program. On a positive note, we reduced cell phone contract costs by $67,000. This was the correct management decision, but it was the result of an internal review process not connected to the budget directives. Beyond the strategic management decisions submitted, the budget recommendations you see before you include an additional $300,000 in cuts. The $500,000 addition for vehicles was not requested in our September submittal. We believe the projected budget savings for fiscal year 21 is overstated, and we can provide greater analysis perhaps during subcommittee hearings. Mr. Chairman, legendary coach Vince Lombardi was always known for challenging his players to pursue perfection in the execution of the fundamentals of football. He would remind them that perfection was rarely attained. However, his players knew that if they pursued perfection, the odds of achieving excellence were greatly enhanced. The 525 employees of the Georgia Department of Agriculture are committed to these principles. These are principles we talk about every day. Now, we all know there's never been a perfect bill. I've been around a long time. I've never seen a perfect bill. I've never seen a perfect budget either. None of us have. Yet the challenges this budget presents are as follows. Over the next 18 months, there will be fewer food safety inspections. There'll be fewer animal industry inspections. The span between fuel pump and scale inspections will grow, and the growing demand for meat inspection will have to be shifted to our federal partners. I join many of you in wanting to see Georgia establish a nation-leading presence in the production of industrial hemp. According to USDA, our hemp program will soon be approved if I'm able to, quote, certify authorization of appropriations. If I am able to certify, quote, authorization of appropriations, end quote. And we have to do that to fulfill our state regulatory responsibilities. I cannot certify to something I do not have. The figure required for the supplemental is $200,000, and for fiscal 21 is $800,000. I thank you for listening to this uncomfortable information. It is of no personal comfort to me that I share it with you, but it is truthful and it is accurate. My hope is in the coming weeks we can work together to secure some acceptable solutions. I look forward to your discussions today and to your questions later in subcommittee as well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Pruitt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner, is it not true that the certification of the monies that's needed does not require the budget to be passed, could possibly be a letter of certification?
Representative, I believe that's correct. I know that, I know that there's, first let's talk about maybe beyond the budget process. There are a couple of things that are linked together. My understanding that Chairman Corbett's got a bill to be introduced pretty quickly, and Chairman McCall to kind of enhance what we passed last year to kind of get it more square with the federal regulations. But in tandem with that, there has to be some budget acknowledgement if we're going to have a state regulatory program. There are several options that could be there. We could focus on growers. There may be a chance that growers could go under the federal program to start, and then we could change that in coming year. I can tell you this, for processors are not involved in the actual federal plan. The plan focuses on growers. And so we're going to advance very quickly. The rulemaking is already underway for processors. And we believe post-February there will be a processor's license available for those businesses. We need to provide that. What we need to do is provide certainty to these. That's what the industry is looking for. And we'll be able to do that for processors here pretty quickly. The grower thing has to go along with our regulatory responsibility and along with compliance with federal regs.
Mr. Chairman, just quickly, I just want to say thank you for your support and your help, but the urgency of being able to put plants in the ground this spring is important to the farmer.
Thanks, Representative. Appreciate it. And it may be one of this asterisks here too. I know Chairman Watson's here. Many of you may not know. One thing we're really, really good at. It's gotten very well, much better over the last 20 to 30 years. Is our growing fruit and vegetable industry. Well, with that is a very strong presence of the plant production industry. So we have many producers that are world-renowned. I mean, talking about with the production of fruit and vegetable plants, and they're down in Chairman's district. They need some certainty right now because they actually have external requests from other states to be able to take the clones and to replicate those plants so that they'll be ready for production in 2020. That's why quick action on the bill is important, because that's one of the things we've got to clean up to allow interstate commerce to take place. And so, and I know they're right on the edge. They too, Chairman, could also kind of go with a letter, as long as we help provide them some certainty, and we surely look forward to working with y'all on that.
Representative Al Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Commissioner.
Yes, sir.
Thank you most of all for your candor. And we know as a constitutional officer you have a little more wiggle room, because I very honestly, it's always amazed me how folk come up and paint this rosy picture of cuts, but you were dead on it, and it kind of makes me think when I was a little boy, when Grandma said I had to take castor oil, I was supposed to run around and say, "Sure is good, Grandma." Thank you for being honest.
Yes, sir.
Representative Carolyn Hughley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Commissioner, for your presentation. Should our citizens be concerned about food safety? When you talk about food safety inspections and meat inspections are going to be few and far between, what is our obligation to the public if we're going to do this?
You have my word that the team that we have on the ground will do its job every day and will lead this nation. Matter of fact, I think I may have shared with y'all last year, we're not too far post this recognition for me to share it again. In 2018, your Georgia Department of Agriculture Food Safety Team was recognized as the #1 food safety team in the nation. Not by departments of agriculture, but by the American Food and Drug Officials Association, which is all health and food safety over the country. So I'm real proud of that team. But we are a growing state. And that's one of the big challenges that we all have, is how we're going to fulfill our obligations under a law in a growing state. And we want to be very strategic and very cooperative and work all with everyone along the way. But I can promise you, our team does a good job every day, but we are going to see, with reduction in staff, you simply are not, you can't cover that territory maybe as frequently as you would like to.
One other question, Mr. Chairman. If agriculture is our #1 industry, then I'm very concerned that we are not taking better care of our #1 industry. So, thank you.
I'm always grateful. Thank you. I realize the posture of the question, but if you allow me the good nature of this, it's not if. There's no if to it. It's not if it is. I mean, I know your question was a little different, but don't everybody think that it's not, because it is.
Representative Watson. Sam.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Commissioner, right here, for being here. I guess I just want to first say thank you. I know you thanked Thomas earlier, but you know, I live and work in a district with farmers every day, and I can't tell you how many times I've been told, if it were not for the Safety 21 program, I would not be farming today. And it's the expedited activity of this body that helped get that forward and get that done. But there's also many that also say, I didn't make the cut, and they're in serious trouble. Our commodity input costs continue to go up. We've had trade wars and battles, and we're being impacted by trade. Agriculture is in trouble, and it looks like it's in trouble here under the Gold Dome as well. But I do want to thank you for all your hard work that you've done on that program. We've talked continuously on the block grant, and I hope that continues to finish that deal so that folks can get some much needed money. But I just wanted to state that for this body that we're in trouble, and it's really scary to see what's happening in agriculture today, and it being our state's #1 industry is very, very scary, and appreciate all you do.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Representative Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner,
I'm sorry.
Hi. I also am in a very strong ag district, and I want to go off of what Sam just said. I've got farmers that aren't going to make it. What we've done is monumental, and we're very grateful for it. We appreciate all that you've done. I'm concerned about the budget too. I think we've grown our Georgia Grown name out there, and with the things you're going to be cutting, is that going to hurt our future too? Again, that's going to fall back on my farmers again. If we continue what we're doing, it was helping. We're spreading our markets, and now my concern is we're going to actually be cutting them.
It is unfortunate that the number I gave you a truthful part, because we developed the submittal. $161,000 of our initial cut are program dollars for the advancement of the brand. And I will say this, I hesitate saying this because I don't want y'all to think we don't need to put state dollars into it, because we do. But we've been very aggressive in the past year with the trade issues in China, and now I'm delighted that the markets are already responding. The futures on cotton and things are and I'm really excited about what the sales and the business is going to take place in restoring kind of some sanity to the Chinese impact of the marketplace. But here's what we've done: the agriculture trade promotion program to answer the challenge of the China trade deal. There were $200 million set aside for that, for people to compete. As far as a state brand, I believe I'm accurate in saying that we're the only state brand that competed and won. At about $1.4 million that we're able to secure of federal dollars, but it's solely focused on pecan. We have a 3-year project in Taiwan. We will be trying to build a new Asian base in Taiwan, which actually gives you some pretty good avenues into second and third tier cities into China anyway. But to build a new base for pecan, and then when we can do that, other commodities will flow. Success breeds success. It'll flow every time. But we took 5 growers with those resources to Taiwan in September. Then we welcomed 10 of their buyers back here a month later, and 6 containers of in-shell Georgia-grown pecans were on the shelves in Taipei this Christmas season with our brand. But for us going, it would have never happened. And so we've got to continue to go. Chef Holly, who many of you know, our Georgia-grown chef, she'll be with Paul Thompson back in Taipei here in about 6 weeks. We're going to be at the Taipei Bakery Show, which is a huge deal in that part of Asia. And we'll be showing people how to use them. And so we've got to continue to go, but we're going to try to leverage, I want you to know we're leveraging as many federal resources as possible, but I do believe it's important for our state to invest as well.
Thank you.
Last question. Representative Gilliard.
Commissioner, Happy New Year.
Hey, yes, sir.
You know, Johnny Mercer once said, accentuate the positive, yes, eliminate the negative, absolutely, and don't mess with Mr. In Between. I think you have done a tremendous job, and all those that have sponsored the legislation on Georgia's hemp industry. Mm-hmm. There have been farmers that have called and reached out since the inception. As a participant in the hemp cream and the hemp oil and the hemp oatmeal, hemp has a great possibility in Georgia, and I would hope that the certifications, the monies that it would take would not prohibit us from moving Georgia forward and having a very viable hemp industry. Thank you for your service.
Thank you, Representative. Thanks, sir.
Had 2 or 3 more questions, but I'm going to cut it off there so we can have one more speaker before lunch. If you didn't get your question answered, please catch the commissioner as he leaves, and I'm sure he'll be glad to stay and answer your questions for you. Commissioner, thank you very much for
Thanks,
coming.
sir.
Appreciate it.
Sure.
Commissioner Mark Butler, Labor. You ready? Yeah. How are you?
How you doing? Yeah, we were going to do a fun graphic and then thought better of it. It's kind of hard to come up with something as much as the stuff was moving around.
Please give the commissioner your attention. We're gathering up for lunch here. Commissioner, welcome. We're glad to have you today.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the committee. I can remember, it feels like it was a million years ago when I was sitting out there in those same seats listening to the person that used to stand up here doing exactly what I am doing now. Of course, it was different times back then. We were in a pretty scary recession. A lot of Georgians were needing work. And it's good to see that, you know, today we still have problems when it comes to our economy and the workforce, but it's not the same ones that we had 10 years ago. First of all, I want to start off by giving you just a quick little snapshot of what's been going on with Georgia and kind of where we are and what some of the concerns may be going forward. First of all, we've had a very good year this year, again. If y'all may have heard the last jobs report that came out for the month of November, which are the latest available numbers, it showed that we set a new record for the lowest unemployment rate in the history of the state of Georgia. We also set records for the total number of individuals in our workforce, that is everybody who is currently working or seeking work. We also set a new record for the total number of individuals employed. And we also set a new record for the total number of jobs. So that sounds like a bunch of broken records. But that's how it was. And I'm going to go on record as predicting that when December's jobs report comes out here this Thursday, you're probably going to hear even more good news. The only number in the jobs report that gives me some pause that we've seen over the last 12 months is the workforce number. That is that number which represents all those either working or actively seeking work. You want that number to increase just like you have your jobs numbers increase, and we have not seen that. Matter of fact, it has been lagging greatly behind. And of course, if any of you out here own businesses, I don't have to tell you any of this because you're having a hard time finding workers pretty much no matter where you are. Give an example, back in November, we showed a job growth of roughly about 70,000 jobs, and we only added just a little over 10,000 new workers to our workforce. That over the long haul is not sustainable. We need that number to be much, much higher. And I heard somebody ask some questions this morning when I was watching you guys on the internet. Somebody said, what should our focus be? Well, as your labor commissioner, I would tell you workforce development, workforce development, workforce development. Anything that may entail, whether it's keep investing in education, finding ways to get folks off the sidelines, helping increase your workers who are out there right now, skill levels to go on to that next level of job, to clear out some of those beginning jobs, anything that we can do. Also, take a look at some of our safety net programs that may be causing some barriers for some individuals. See if we can't help them get past those barriers so they can move on up. And I think right now, the Trump administration has proposed letting 10 states do a pilot program to where they can have a lot more leeway in how they design those programs. And so instead of having that cliff effect where somebody gets a raise and all of a sudden loses a whole bunch of state benefits, they actually are making less money per hour, we need to start designing that system to where they can ease off instead of drop off. That sounds a whole lot better. We could help a whole lot of people that way. Now, with that being said, we'll quickly, instead of going through all the lines in the budget, you guys have been looking at it and you've seen it. I'll just kind of tell you some of the highlights and some of my thoughts. First of all, I know that throughout the budget there's a lot of notations in there about reducing positions throughout Department of Labor. Please bear in mind that we've been reducing positions in the Department of Labor for the last 8 years, to the tune of about 800 positions over the last several years. So we've done a really good job as far as making us leaner in that kind of case. And so, I don't really know that reducing the number of individuals working for us actually is going to have that much of a positive effect, and I'll explain that in just a minute, what needs to be done. Also, there's a line there talking about taking money from jobs from Georgia graduates. I would tell you that I will fight from here until y'all kick me out of office to have any cuts to that program. Matter of fact, I'm fighting to expand it. It serves over 700 young people around the state to help make sure that they graduate high school, and then we track them for 12 months after that to make sure that they go on either that next training or get a job. It's a very successful program. It has over a 95% success rate in helping at-risk youth actually graduate. My predecessor was a very big proponent of that program, and I have also been trying to be one too. I also sit on the national board, and have seen other states around us surpass us in utilizing that program, states like Louisiana and Kentucky, which vastly outnumber JGG schools than we do. And so also there's another line in there that talks about raises. Now, I would personally love to give all of my employees a $5,000 a year raise. It's much needed. However, the raise that is pointed out in here, even though I've been told that we can't be giving money to make up for federal funds, asking for a $1,000 raise for everybody that makes under $40,000 with only right around $200,000 is not going to quite get it there. That raises a $1.2 million ask right there. So that would be on top of the current cuts that are currently already listed in the budget, because I have to fund that somewhere. And so that would have to be some type of internal cut, either less positions to fund that raise or just not do it, one way or the other. So back to my previous comment, talking about raises and talking about positions, the big issue that we currently have in the Department of Labor, and I'm going to go out on a limb and say probably most of state government's got the same problem, is that we are currently way under market rate for pay for most of our positions, especially our frontline positions. It is something we've been grappling with at the Department of Labor for several years, and every time we have saved up enough money in order to try to figure out to fix that, we either get a very large federal cut, which started way back when I first got here, or we see a state cut. And so basically all of our cuts that we've tried to come up with, planning to try to come up with some raises or increase some pay for certain positions, usually gets waylaid in some type of budget process, and usually has been on the federal side more than the state, because that's where the bulk of our money comes from, but it still doesn't fix the problem. Right now, in our current analysis, if you just compare it to other state jobs or in some private sector jobs that are similar to ours, we are about 40% under market. That's a big number. All right, and so you're talking about some service specialists that like those frontline people that you see in the career centers that are meeting with the individuals come in who have lost their jobs. Their starting pay is right around $29,000, which quite frankly is shameful, and it needs to be somewhere around 40. And that is our issue right now. We also have that same problem inside our office here in Department of Labor. It is also one of the reasons why we are very challenged right now in replacing anybody that either A, retires or leaves. New hires over the last several years have had a very, very high turnover rate. It's become very challenging. And one of the reasons why it's so challenging is because we have an extremely tight labor market right now, as I said previously, talking about the amount of jobs that we're seeing created, and these are very well-paying jobs that we're seeing created, plus with the fact you're not seeing very many workers come into the workforce. And so there, matter of fact, when we ask employers around the state where you get most of your employees, they don't say the technical college or the university or the high school, they go some other employer. Everybody's stealing each other's employees. Well, the private sector's doing a really good job stealing mine. And there's not a whole lot I can do about that. But I've become a very good training ground for folks going on to the next job. The only problem is it's very expensive for me to train one individual. Now, the things that we've been doing to help combat that, we are going into a triage right now, taking a look at each section and seeing what we can do. Maybe if we can improve, this 10 jobs or this 15 jobs or that 30 jobs, and that's what we're going to do, try to figure out ways. We're going to more automation. We've been experimenting with kiosk and career centers for check-in. That can alleviate one position right there. Pretty much we're trying anything and everything that we can to alleviate this issue, because it's not going to get any better. It's going to continue to get worse. And yeah, if I had a magic wand and I had all the money I needed, I would raise all these salaries up to where they need to be. But you only have so much. And right now, it's very hard to fill the positions that we have that are currently open because of the pay scale, which puts us in a very big crunch. Yes, we do have a lot of open positions, but it's taken us roughly on average about 4 months to fill a job. That's a long time, y'all. And in that time, it takes a long time to get that person trained up to do that job. And so you're basically talking about an 8-month process where they're actually going to do you any good. So it's become very challenging. So much so that in order to get past some of these issues, we've had to offer overtime in several parts of the Department of Labor in order to get the work done so we can meet the targets and the times that we have to hit as mandated by the federal government. Matter of fact, I think it was at the very end of last year, we had over 100 employees at our main office right here in Atlanta that we actually put on overtime in order to make sure that we could get things done in a timely manner. Now, I will tell you from their point of view, they really enjoyed that. Seeing how that their pay is a little bit on the lower end side and having extra money for Christmas was really good for them. And it was the only solution we had at the time. Other things that we're doing right now is we are pushing some jobs that are currently located here in downtown Atlanta out to more rural parts of Georgia. Matter of fact, we are in the very beginning stages of planning on moving our call center operations out of downtown Atlanta into possibly a location in either North Georgia or South Georgia, or split it up and do it one in both. But even in those two areas right now, they are still having issues trying to find people for the jobs that are currently open. So, with that, I turn it back over to you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Stevens, Chairman Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's hard to believe in my lifetime, even when I had jet black hair, that I'd ever be talking about a time whenever our economy was so good that all the jobs are full. I had a reporter stick a microphone in my face last week and said, clearly the economy is going bad, and we got all the signs of it going bad because there's the new job market seems to be getting soft. And I stopped for a minute and I said, there's just nobody to work. I mean, everybody's, for new jobs, are already hired. So you hit the nail on the head, they're cannibalizing. Did I characterize that correctly? There's just nobody to work in this full market.
I'm not going to say there's nobody to work, but it's definitely one of the tightest labor markets that I personally have ever seen in my life. Matter of fact, if you ever want to know how many jobs are currently available in Georgia, or just get kind of a snapshot, any day of the week, you can get on your phone, go to employgeorgia.com. And it will show you how many active online job listings there are in the state. Now, please bear in mind, that's only the online job listings that are in the state of Georgia. I'd be willing to bet if you were to check your phone right now, it's probably going to show you about 100,000 active open job listings in the state of Georgia right now, and probably several thousand were added just yesterday. So it's there are a lot of work, and it's not just Metro Atlanta. I mean, we travel around the state, and I meet with employers all over the state, and they pretty much tell me the same thing. Your area is especially have some issues down where you are down toward the coast. We've seen actually a significant drop in folks in the workforce at certain times of the year, but your job creation is phenomenal down on the coast. I mean, it's one of the hottest job markets, and quite frankly, in the state for its size, population.
Representative Al Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your report, good to see you, Commissioner. Your report just, especially the starting salaries. First, when I finish the question, I'd like to know what's the pay for call centers? 'Cause, you know, what's the call center pay?
Well, we haven't fully established that yet because we're just in the very beginning stages of trying to look at locations. You know, in an ideal situation, we would like to go into maybe one of our larger career centers that's in a more rural part of Georgia that has excess space instead of going out and renting new space, because then that's more expense and it kind of defeats the purpose. But I would, what we're going to try to do, what I would like to do in a perfect world, if I would tell you, and don't hold me to this, and of course I'm out here, I'm all over the internet and everywhere else, but I mean, in a perfect world, those call center jobs, I would like them to start off at about 36, which is, you know, not great, but I mean, I've got a finite amount of money. And so, but, you know, maybe, you know, 36 won't do you much here in downtown Atlanta, but maybe it'll be better somewhere else.
Just to follow up, Mr. Chair, you can bring as many 36s as you can find down southeast Georgia. We got some folk, but your report made me think back during the time when one of the most coveted jobs in Georgia was found with the Labor Department. Had good benefits, but now the market is so tight because there's so many other jobs out there, and you're falling behind. And when you talked about having real trouble keeping people direct related to pay, I just wanted to ask you, a proverbial question was asked years ago of Ms. Lincoln and said, other than that, Ms. Lincoln, how did you like to play?
Well, you also keep in mind, Department of Labor, of course, this is probably true throughout state government, but I think the average age right now in Department of Labor is 51. Okay, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to do the math on that. You know, most people that, especially ones, if you're 51 and you've been working Department of Labor since, say, you graduated college or whatever, you're getting pretty close to that 30-year mark. And, you know, I have very few employees that want to stay past that 30-year mark. You know, most of them are like 30 years, I'm gone. I'm out the door. I have a few, though. I've got one right now that's been with me for 40. I have no idea why. Maybe he's bored. I don't know. But, you know, you take that along with the fact that when the retirement is not as rich as it used to be, that has an effect on retention.
Representative Hughley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Commissioner, thank you for your presentation. I was just curious about the innovations that you all are doing to expand the job market, stuff like banning the box for individuals and other types of barriers that people have to employment. What are we doing with that?
Well, we work with several nonprofits around the state helping place individuals. We're actually also in the process of redesigning our Top Step program, which you may be familiar with, which helps people coming out of the correctional system. A lot of our business services recruiters have really been pushing businesses that had previously not been open to hiring somebody with a past criminal record to taking a look at that right there, especially in this tight labor market, because we believe we can definitely make a big impact in this area right now because the labor market is so tight. And we've had very good success. We actually polled over 1,000 businesses, I think it was 2 years ago now, and I believe the number was right at, I think it was 85% said they would be willing to hire somebody with a previous criminal record, which if you know anything about how people can't hire what they can't hire, 85%, you might as well be 100%, because there's going to be about 15 to 20% of people who just absolutely, because of regulations, cannot hire somebody with a past criminal record. So I think we've had an effect on that, of getting out there and beating the bushes and convincing people. We've also worked with several different halfway houses and placing individuals in jobs where they normally would not have been placed because they would not even interview somebody. So those types of things is what we're working with. We also work with a lot of national organizations to take a look at some of the barriers that we have to employment, whether it's, certain things where somebody, if they get that 50-cent raise, all of a sudden they lose $2.50 worth of benefits, come up with ways where we can get around that and get some type of exception to that, because we want that person to achieve and move on. We do not want somebody to turn down a raise or a promotion because it's actually going to knock them backwards.
Representative Pruitt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to stand up for this one. First off, thank you for the job you do, but I want you to know that, in my district, right there in middle Georgia, our household income, which is usually two people, is $28,000 per household. We have an unemployment of 6% and 8% right in that area, and I really appreciate the governor. He's worked hard and he's made a difference in opening up some plants that had closed in the past, and I know he continues to do that. But please know that 2, 3, 4 jobs in my district is the same as 20, 30, or 40 jobs in Atlanta. And this kind of salary would put people into top income. So look at us, please. Thank you.
We're like I said, we're just the very beginning on that, and that's not the only jobs we're pushing at. We're pushing a lot of jobs that had gotten, for whatever reason over the years, brought into Atlanta back out into the district. So there's going to be a lot more of that. I mean, we don't really have a choice. We kind of have to, because downtown Atlanta is just too tough of a competitive environment for us right now.
Senator Sims.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Commissioner, and thank you so much for your report. And we do appreciate the offer to bring the call center to Southwest Georgia. We are at 8% unemployment, so, and $36,000 looks wonderful to us. And I think all of my colleagues from Southwest Georgia heard that, did we not? We did. We appreciate it so much.
Now, remember I said don't hold me to that.
Whatever you're bringing, we don't care. We've already spoken to our technical college directors, and we will train for you. You won't even have to worry about training. So I'll talk to you as soon as we're done with this session, okay? I'll see you at your office. Thank you so much. None. Shameless plug for Southwest Georgia.
I think I'm going to be getting lobbied instead of the other way around now. Well, anything you can do to help me with my budget, that can definitely solidify that number.
Okay, we'll see y'all back here at 1:30. Thank you, Commissioner.